At the edge of the golden desert, where the sands shift endlessly and time itself seems to sleep, rises a figure so ancient, so enigmatic, that it has haunted the imagination of humankind for thousands of years. The Great Sphinx of Giza, carved from a single massive block of limestone, crouches with the body of a lion and the face of a human, its gaze forever fixed eastward toward the rising sun. Erosion has scarred its body, its nose is long gone, and winds have eaten away at its once sharp features, yet it remains the immovable guardian of Egypt's most sacred plateau. It has seen dynasties rise and fall, armies clash and vanish, and countless travelers stand before it in awe. And yet, for all its familiarity as an icon, the Sphinx remains wrapped in riddles as deep as the sands that surround it. In the early morning, before tourists flood the plateau, when silence blankets the desert and the horizon burns with a red-gold glow, the Sphinx feels less like a monument and more like a living presence. Birds perch silently on its battered crown, the shadows lengthen across its massive paws, and the faint sound of desert winds create an illusion of whispering voices. In those moments, the Sphinx is not just stone. It is something more, a sentinel that remembers. Its very survival over 4,500 years makes it both a marvel of engineering and a mystery of endurance. Why was it built? Who was it meant to guard? And most tantalizing of all, what lies hidden beneath its immense weight? For centuries, the Sphinx has been rumored to stand atop secret chambers, tunnels carved by forgotten hands. Some say these hidden spaces were meant to house sacred texts, records of lost civilizations, or even treasures unimaginable. Others insist that the Sphinx conceals nothing at all, that its mystery is symbolic, not physical. But the stories persist. They persist because the Sphinx invites such speculation. It is not merely a statue. It is a riddle cast in stone, daring humanity to solve it. Legends passed down through ages speak of hollow places under its paws, of sealed doors buried in sand, of passages leading into the earth. Medieval travelers wrote of underground holes filled with secrets of the ancients. Egyptian myths themselves tell of gates to the underworld, guarded by lion-bodied figures. Even today, whispers of tunnels and chambers stir controversy, dividing scholars, mystics, and seekers of truth. Why does this idea endure so strongly? Because the Sphinx feels incomplete, as if it holds back something it is unwilling to reveal. Standing before it, one cannot help but feel small, not simply because of its sheer size, but because of the aura it projects. Its eyes, weathered but still powerful, seem to look not only outward toward the desert horizon but inward, piercing into the soul of those who dare to gaze back. Generations of pharaohs, priests, soldiers, and common pilgrims have felt that same strange mix of awe and unease. The Sphinx does not tell us what it knows. It only watches, yet the silence beneath its paws may not be empty. In the last century alone, scientific surveys have uncovered anomalies beneath its surface, rectangular voids and unexpected hollows that should not be there. Are they natural fissures, or the remains of something deliberately constructed? The official narrative often dismisses these findings, but the mysteries do not vanish. Instead, they deepen. This is where the story begins, in the shadow of a monument that is both mute and eloquent, both familiar and unknowable. The Sphinx is not simply a relic of ancient Egypt. It is a symbol of humanity's eternal struggle with the unknown. For every question answered, more emerge. Who carved its face? Was it truly built in the age of Khafre, or does it date back to a civilization lost to memory? Why do myths and legends across cultures insist that beneath such monuments lie hidden libraries of knowledge? As we move deeper into this mystery, one thing becomes clear. The Sphinx was never meant to give away its secrets easily. Like the riddle of the Sphinx in Greek mythology, where the answer was life itself, this monument challenges us to confront the limits of our understanding. Perhaps the tunnels, if they exist, are not just physical corridors of stone, but metaphors for the deeper tunnels within our own past, our own psyche, and our thirst for truth. The desert holds its breath around the Sphinx, as though conspiring to keep its silence. And yet, beneath the sand, something may stir, an untouched chamber, a sealed passage, or a library of knowledge waiting for the right moment to emerge. The question is not only whether such places exist, but whether we are ready for what they might reveal. Imagine what it would mean if beneath the Sphinx lies evidence of a forgotten chapter of human history, one that could rewrite everything we think we know about where we came from. For now, the Sphinx waits. It has waited longer than empires, longer than religions, longer than the languages we speak today. Patient, eternal, unyielding. And as the sun climbs higher, its face begins to glow with light, a reminder that beneath its silence lies a story still untold. The guardian watches, and the sands whisper, daring us to ask the most haunting question of all: what secret sleeps beneath Egypt's oldest guardian? Long before archaeologists with ground-penetrating radar and scanning technology arrived at Giza, the Sphinx was already the subject of whispered legends. These whispers did not begin in modern times, nor even in the Middle Ages, but in the distant past, when ancient priests and storytellers looked upon the colossal figure with a mix of reverence and unease. The Sphinx was not merely a monument. It was a threshold, a presence that suggested the existence of secrets hidden beneath the earth. For centuries, travelers, pilgrims, and scholars carried away stories of hollow chambers and unseen corridors lying just under its paws, spreading the belief across cultures and continents. In the ancient world, knowledge was often guarded, encoded in myth or veiled in allegory. The Sphinx, with its silent face and leonine strength, naturally became the symbol of that hidden knowledge. Egyptian priests, according to some accounts, spoke of secret sanctuaries where wisdom was preserved, far from the reach of ordinary people. These tales evolved as they passed through generations. By the time Greek and Roman chroniclers encountered Egypt, the idea of hidden holes and underground passages beneath sacred sites had already taken root. Herodotus, Strabo, and others recorded rumors of labyrinths and shadowed corridors, descriptions so detailed they sound less like myth and more like memory. The whispers grew louder in the Middle Ages, when Arab travelers wrote of wonders buried beneath the sands. Some described sealed doors carved into the base of the Sphinx, said to open into vaults of treasure and texts from civilizations lost. In these accounts, the guardianship of the Sphinx extended beyond stone. It watched over what lay beneath. The treasure, however, was not always gold. Some claimed it was knowledge, records of astronomy, mathematics, even the secrets of how the pyramids themselves were built. To a world hungry for understanding, this was far more valuable than jewels or coin. But legends never come without danger. Alongside the promises of hidden wisdom came darker tales, that those who dared to enter the Sphinx's supposed passages never returned, swallowed by curses or by traps set to protect what lay within. The Sphinx was said to guard, but also to punish. These chilling elements kept the legend alive. After all, what is a mystery without fear to keep intruders at bay? Even as centuries passed and the sands rose higher, nearly burying the Sphinx up to its neck, the whispers never ceased. Bedouins living near the plateau told travelers of strange hollow sounds when the wind blew across the monument's base, as though the desert itself were breathing. Others swore they saw faint outlines of doors in the eroded limestone, briefly visible before vanishing back into the stone. Every generation added its own layer of speculation, weaving fact and imagination into a tapestry of intrigue. By the 19th century, when European explorers and adventurers arrived in Egypt, these whispers had hardened into legend. Treasure hunters came, drawn less by scholarly curiosity than by promises of hidden wealth. They dug recklessly at the Sphinx's paws and flanks, guided by tales that had drifted through the centuries. Though they uncovered no glittering treasure, the very act of digging lent the stories new credibility. If men were willing to risk so much, surely the mystery must be real. These rumors of tunnels and chambers beneath the Sphinx became part of a larger pattern in Egyptian lore. From the Valley of the Kings to the Step Pyramids, stories of hidden tombs and sealed passages abound. Egypt was a land where the boundary between myth and history blurred. Every stone seemed to carry a memory, every ruin a secret. The Sphinx, standing at the heart of it all, embodied this fusion of silence and enigma. To dismiss these whispers as mere fantasy would be too simple. History shows us that myths often preserve fragments of truth, distorted but not destroyed. Tales of Troy were once thought fiction until Heinrich Schliemann uncovered its ruins. The same may be said of the Sphinx. Could it be that beneath centuries of exaggeration and invention lies a kernel of reality, an underground space deliberately hidden from view? And yet, the whispers also raise deeper questions. Why would ancient builders carve tunnels beneath such a colossal guardian? Were they meant as storage for sacred texts, as ceremonial passageways, or as symbolic pathways to the underworld described in Egyptian religion? Each possibility opens a new dimension of meaning. The Sphinx may not simply watch the horizon. It may be sitting atop a threshold to something greater, something sacred. The mystery intensifies because these whispers have never been silenced. Even in the modern age, where satellites scan the Earth and archaeologists demand evidence, the legends remain alive. They appear in books, in documentaries, and in the mouths of guides who lead tourists to the Sphinx's shadow. And in the echo of those voices, one feels the weight of centuries pressing down, urging us not to forget that beneath stone and sand may lie more than we dare to imagine. As night falls over the Giza plateau, when the last rays of sunlight fade and shadows consume the Sphinx, the whispers seem almost audible. The air feels charged, as though the monument is alive with secrets it refuses to share. It stands silent, but silence is not absence. Silence can be the greatest hint of all, a pause before revelation. And so the question that haunted ancient priests, medieval travelers, and modern explorers continues to linger. Do the sands hide hollow places beneath the Sphinx? And if so, what story waits to be told there? The official story, taught in universities and repeated by tour guides, places the Great Sphinx firmly within the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, builder of the second pyramid at Giza, around 2500 BCE. According to this mainstream view, the Sphinx was carved as a colossal guardian for his pyramid complex, its face bearing his own likeness. It was an act of power, piety, and permanence, a monument meant to project Khafre's divine authority into eternity. But history, like the desert sands, is not so easily contained. For as much as this explanation satisfies textbooks, it leaves behind shadows, uncertainties, contradictions, and mysteries that refuse to be buried. To understand why the Sphinx is so often linked to Khafre, we must journey back to the Old Kingdom, when Egypt was ruled by divine kings who merged religion with politics in ways that shaped not only their world, but also ours. Khafre inherited a throne gilded by his father, Khufu, the builder of the Great Pyramid. For Khafre, the pressure to establish his own legacy was immense. His pyramid, though slightly smaller, still loomed as a testament to ambition and faith. And beside it rose the Sphinx, or so we are told, carved from a bedrock outcrop that may have been shaped into a lion long before Khafre laid claim to it. The evidence tying Khafre to the Sphinx is surprisingly thin. There are no inscriptions on the statue itself naming him as its builder, no ancient text declaring his authorship. Instead, scholars point to fragments, a broken statue of Khafre found in the Valley Temple nearby, alignment between the pyramid complex and the Sphinx, and stylistic comparisons between the Sphinx's face and other depictions of the pharaoh. To Egyptologists, these are persuasive clues. Yet to others, they are circumstantial at best. If Khafre truly built the Sphinx, why did he not leave his mark upon it, as so many other pharaohs eagerly did on their monuments? Why is there silence where one would expect triumph? This silence has given rise to theories both daring and controversial. Some argue that the Sphinx predates Khafre entirely, that he merely claimed it, restoring and reshaping it into his own likeness. If true, this would mean the Sphinx is older than mainstream history allows, perhaps older by thousands of years. The erosion patterns on its body, some geologists argue, are more consistent with heavy rainfall than desert winds, suggesting an age that could push the statue back to a time when the Sahara was green, long before recorded dynasties. If that was so, the Sphinx might be a relic not of the Egyptians we know, but of a forgotten civilization that vanished before history began. The idea is electrifying, for it shifts the Sphinx from being a monument of one king's ego to being the last survivor of an age beyond memory. Suddenly, Khafre is not the creator but the inheritor, a pharaoh standing in the shadow of a monument older than his crown, older even than his people's myths. Such a possibility raises unsettling questions. Who carved it originally? For what purpose? And what secrets might they have left beneath it? Even within accepted history, the Sphinx carries contradictions. Ancient Egyptians themselves seemed unsure of its origins. Centuries after Khafre, pharaohs like Thutmose restored the monument, placing a stele between its paws that recorded a dream in which the Sphinx promised him kingship if he cleared it from sands. To Thutmose, it was already ancient, already shrouded in myth. Later dynasties offered it worship, not as a man statue, but as a god in its own right, or Mekhet, Horus of the horizon. This transformation from royal likeness to divine symbol suggests that even the Egyptians did not fully understand the monument's beginnings. Here lies the emotional tension at the heart of the mystery. The official narrative offers certainty, grounding the Sphinx within a known history. But the gaps in evidence allow doubt to seep in, and doubt is fertile soil for legend. For those who look at the Sphinx and feel its age pressing against them, Khafre's shadow is not enough. They sense something deeper, something older, lurking beneath the pharaoh's name. And so the debate continues, a tug-of-war between orthodoxy and speculation, between what is recorded and what is imagined. In this struggle, the Sphinx stands mute, its eroded lips refusing to confirm or deny. It forces us to wrestle with our own need for certainty. Do we accept the neatness of Khafre's authorship, or do we allow ourselves to consider the possibility that history is incomplete? The Sphinx, like a riddle, offers no easy answer. As the sun sets behind the pyramids, casting long shadows over the Sphinx's body, one cannot help but feel the presence of Khafre, not as a master, but as a figure dwarfed by the monument itself. If he built it, then it is his eternal triumph. If he did not, then he lived in the shadow of a mystery greater than his reign, a reminder that even kings are not always the authors of their own legacies. The story of the Sphinx, tied so tightly to Khafre yet slipping beyond his grasp, sets the stage for the next part of our journey. For if the Sphinx's origins are unclear, the writings left by later rulers and priests add more layers of intrigue. On its very body and in its shadow, inscriptions hint at secrets long buried, at promises of hidden chambers, at riddles carved in stone. The pharaoh's shadow fades, but the words of the ancients remain, whispers etched into rock, waiting to be heard. If the Sphinx guards secret beneath its paws, then perhaps the clues were always in plain sight, carved in stone, etched into stele, whispered by inscriptions that weather both wind and time. Ancient Egypt left behind no shortage of texts, but many are fragmentary, enigmatic, or couched in the language of myth. Among them, a few speak directly of the Sphinx and hint at mysteries hidden within its shadow. These words, though often overlooked, may hold the key to understanding whether the monument conceals more than its silent face suggests. One of the most striking inscriptions stands between the Sphinx's paws, the dream stele of Thutmose IV. Carved around 1400 BCE, more than 1,000 years after Khafre's reign, it recounts a vision the young prince experienced while resting in the shadow of the half-buried Sphinx. In his dream, the great guardian spoke to him, promising that if he cleared the sands choking its body, the throne of Egypt would be his. When Thutmose awoke, he ordered the sands removed and set up the stele to commemorate the divine encounter. But the inscription does more than record a royal dream. It suggests that by the time of Thutmose, the Sphinx was already ancient, its body long buried, its origins mysterious even to the Egyptians themselves. Yet the stele holds oddities. Scholars note that some lines are damaged, leaving tantalizing gaps. Were those missing passages simply worn away by centuries of erosion or deliberately erased? Legends claim the stele once contained references to hidden chambers or passages near the Sphinx, cryptic warnings that knowledge of immense power lay below. Without the missing lines, certainty vanishes, and speculation thrives. The dream stele, therefore, is both a record and a riddle. It confirms the Sphinx's sacred aura but leaves us wondering what truths may have been lost in the erasures. Beyond the dream stele, other inscriptions feed the fire of mystery. In temples and tombs across Egypt, hieroglyphs speak of sealed places, hidden halls, and repositories of wisdom known only to the gods and their chosen priests. While these texts rarely name the Sphinx directly, the themes they evoke resonate with the idea of a guardian figure watching over knowledge concealed beneath the earth. Some scholars argue these were symbolic metaphors for spiritual initiation into sacred mysteries, but to others, the Egyptians' words were literal. They described real chambers, real libraries, buried for protection from time and turmoil. The notion of secret repositories beneath sacred monuments appears again in later writings, particularly during the Greco-Roman period. Writers such as Pliny the Elder referred to wonders hidden in Egyptian temples, implying that priests safeguarded both treasures and knowledge in places beyond common reach. Though Pliny himself dismissed many of these tales as exaggeration, their persistence reveals how strongly the idea of hidden chambers clung to the Sphinx and monuments like it. For a culture that saw knowledge as divine power, burying it beneath an eternal guardian would have been both practical and symbolic. Even more intriguing are scattered references to texts describing chambers of initiation. These writings suggest that the Egyptians saw physical spaces as conduits for spiritual transformation, dark corridors and hidden rooms where priests confronted symbolic death and rebirth. Could the Sphinx, half lion and half man, half earth and half sky, have been linked to such a tradition? If so, The inscriptions hint at a far deeper function than mere decoration. There were road signs pointing toward a greater purpose. Modern Egyptologists are cautious. They argue that most inscriptions were poetic, religious in tone, not blueprints for hidden rooms. To them, the dream stele is a record of royal propaganda, not a map of underground secrets. But here the emotional tension emerges once more. What scholars dismiss as symbolism may in fact preserve memories of real spaces now lost or concealed. In the blurred line between metaphor and fact lies the very heartbeat of the Sphinx's mystery. Consider the fragments of text that speak of a chamber of creation or a house of the first time, phrases associated with origins, beginnings, and cosmic order. Some believe these refer to mythic events, the dawn of the gods. Yet others propose they hint at actual chambers meant to safeguard records of humanity's earliest past. To stand before the Sphinx and imagine such possibilities is to feel the weight of millennia pressing down. The inscriptions are incomplete, damaged, or ambiguous, but their silences may be as telling as their words. As we read these forgotten inscriptions, we confront a haunting thought. Perhaps the Egyptians themselves left deliberate riddles, planting hints but withholding full disclosure. Their culture prized secrecy, restricting sacred knowledge to the initiated few. If the Sphinx did guard hidden places, it would not be strange for its guardians to veil their truths in layered language, accessible only to those who were worthy, or persistent enough to look deeper. When the sands bury a monument, they do not bury only stone. They bury meaning. And when meaning resurfaces in fragments, a line half-carved, a stele half-erased, a symbol half-understood, the human mind races to fill the void. The inscriptions left near the Sphinx may be fragments of truth, remnants of a language that still resists full translation. Whether they describe dreams, rituals, or real passages beneath the guardian's paws, they whisper the same message. The Sphinx holds more than it reveals. And so the trail of forgotten inscriptions leads us to the next chapter in the mystery. For if ancient texts speak of hidden places, then ancient historians claim to have seen them with their own eyes. Greek travelers like Herodotus and later writers described a labyrinth of underground holes so vast it defied belief, a labyrinth that some say connects directly to the Sphinx. If the inscriptions are whispers, the accounts of these travelers are echoes, louder, more vivid, and impossible to ignore. When Greek travelers set foot upon the ancient soil of Egypt, they did not come merely as visitors, but as seekers of wonder, eager to chronicle the marvels of a civilization already old when Greece was still young. Among those travelers, none looms larger than Herodotus, the so-called father of history. In the 5th century BCE, he journeyed through Egypt and recorded sights that even today stretch the imagination. Among his most astonishing accounts is that of a labyrinth so vast, so intricate, that he claimed it surpassed even the pyramids in grandeur. If his words are to be believed, this was no mere palace, but a structure of mythic proportions, one that may hold direct ties to the mystery of the Sphinx. Herodotus wrote of a labyrinth near Lake Moeris, in the region of Hawara, south of modern Cairo. He described it as containing 12 vast courts, each with monumental gates, and a bewildering array of holes, chambers, and passageways. Some were above ground, others below. In total, he claimed the labyrinth held more than 3,000 rooms. The sheer immensity of the place overwhelmed him, and he confessed that words could not do justice to what he had seen. For Herodotus, who had also marveled at the pyramids, the labyrinth outshone them all in complexity and grandeur. But what makes this account truly electrifying is his mention of the underground chambers. These, he said, were sealed, forbidden to him and to other visitors. He was told they contained the tombs of kings and sacred crocodiles, but the implication runs deeper. Sealed underground rooms beneath a labyrinthine monument. This description resonates eerily with the enduring rumors of hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx itself. Could the labyrinth Herodotus described have been part of a larger network, an architectural tradition designed to conceal sacred repositories from all but the initiated? Centuries later, other Greek and Roman writers added their voices. Strabo, writing in the 1st century BCE, confirmed Herodotus's description, though he emphasized that the labyrinth had fallen into decay by his time. Pliny the Elder echoed the tale, remarking upon its bewildering construction and vast underground holes. Diodorus Siculus, too, referred to subterranean passages that linked temples and monuments, suggesting that Egypt's greatest secrets were not displayed in sunlight but hidden in the earth. Together, These accounts form a chorus of testimony, reinforcing that the labyrinth was no invention of Herodotus's imagination, but a tangible, astonishing structure. Yet questions remain. The ruins at Hawara, attributed to Pharaoh Amenemhat III of the 12th dynasty, are believed by many Egyptologists to be the very labyrinth Herodotus described. Archaeological excavations reveal traces of colossal walls and vast courtyards, evidence of a building that must have dwarfed the imagination of anyone who stood before it. But much of the site is destroyed, swallowed by time, flood, and stone scavenging. What remains today is but a shadow of the grandeur Herodotus witnessed. The underground chambers he described are nowhere to be seen. Were they looted, collapsed, or perhaps still sealed, waiting in silence beneath the sands? Here lies the tantalizing intersection of myth and possibility. If the labyrinth truly contained thousands of rooms, many hidden beneath the surface, then the ancient Egyptians mastered subterranean construction on a scale we can barely fathom. And if such vast hidden complexes existed, the idea of secret chambers beneath the Sphinx ceases to sound like fantasy and begins to seem like continuity. Perhaps the Sphinx was not unique, but part of a broader tradition of burying knowledge beneath guardians of stone. This possibility raises unsettling questions. What purpose did these hidden chambers serve? Were they merely tombs, as Herodotus was told, or something greater? Some theorists suggest that the labyrinth was a repository of records, a living archive of Egypt's dynasties, sealed away to endure ages of chaos. Others propose it was a temple of initiation, its countless chambers serving as stages in a ritual journey from darkness into light. If so, then the forbidden underground holes may not have held bodies at all, but truths too sacred to be revealed. Critics, of course, urge caution. Herodotus was not always precise. He mixed first-hand observation with hearsay, blending fact with legend. The grandeur of the labyrinth may have been exaggerated, its numbers inflated by or miscommunication. The underground chambers he described might never have existed, or they may have been simple storerooms later embellished into legend. Yet even if Herodotus embellished, the persistence of the labyrinth in multiple ancient sources suggests a core truth, that Egypt's monuments often hid as much as they displayed. And it is here, in the echo of those ancient words, that the Sphinx re-enters the story. For if the labyrinth at Hawara was real, if a vast network of sealed rooms once lay beneath stone and sand, then why not beneath the Sphinx as well? The Egyptians loved symmetry, balance, and continuity. If one monument could guard hidden chambers, perhaps another did too. The labyrinth may thus serve as precedent, a reminder that the Sphinx's mystery is not an isolated fantasy but part of a pattern woven through Egyptian architecture and myth. Herodotus himself may not have connected the labyrinth to the Sphinx, but for us, centuries later, the link is irresistible. Both monuments inspire awe, both conceal mysteries, both blur the line between what is visible and what lies beneath. In the labyrinth's underground holes we glimpse a mirror of the Sphinx's rumored passages, corridors lost to history, waiting in darkness. The ruins at Hawara whisper of what once was, and what may still remain unseen. The Sphinx, crouched eternally on the Giza plateau, whispers too, but in silence. If Herodotus could stand the day where he once marveled, would he still claim the labyrinths surpass the pyramids? Would he look at the Sphinx and wonder what secrets lay sealed within? These are questions only time, and perhaps excavation, can answer. Until then, the labyrinth remains both proof and prophecy, proof that the Egyptians built hidden world beneath their monuments, and prophecy that the Sphinx, too, may guard a labyrinth of its own. For centuries, whispers have persisted that beneath the mighty Sphinx lies a hidden library, a chamber of knowledge so vast and profound that it could rewrite the history of civilization itself. This fabled repository is known in legend as a hole of records, a place where the lost wisdom of ancient worlds is said to rest, sealed away until humanity is ready to receive it. The idea is intoxicating, that below the silent stone pools of Egypt's guardian lies not just rock and sand, but scrolls, tablets, and relics capable of unlocking secrets that reach back to the dawn of human memory. The origins of this legend are mysterious. Some trace it to Egyptian priests themselves, who spoke of records kept in hidden sanctuaries, safe from flood and fire. Others point to the writings of the Greek philosopher Plato, who told of Atlantis, a mighty civilization swallowed by the sea, whose survivors may have preserved their knowledge in distant lands. Still others link it to mystical traditions that emerged much later, esoteric teachings that spoke of a time when the Sphinx would reveal its secrets to a new age of man. Perhaps the most influential modern voice to carry this myth forward was Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet of the early 20th century. In trance states, Cayce claimed visions of the distant past and future. Again and again, he returned to the image of the Sphinx. According to Cayce, beneath its paws lies a hole of records, a library of knowledge preserved by Atlantean refugees who fled their sinking homeland. These records, he said, included the history of mankind before the Great Flood, the science of forgotten technologies, and the spiritual laws that once guided a golden age of humanity. Cayce even predicted a timeline. He spoke of discoveries that would occur in the late 20th century, when humanity had reached a crossroads. He suggested that chambers beneath the Sphinx would be found and opened, revealing truths that would alter how we understood religion, science, and the human story itself. To his followers, this prophecy became a beacon, a promise that the sands of Egypt hid not just stone relics, but a message planted for us by ancestors unimaginably wise. Mainstream Egyptologists scoff at these claims. They argue there is no evidence for Atlantis, no proof of Atlantean refugees depositing records in Egypt, and no archaeological data to support the existence of such a library beneath the Sphinx. The inscriptions of Egypt, after all, speak openly of their gods, their kings, their rituals, but nowhere do they mention a hole of records. To the scientific mind, the legend is no more than myth layered over mystery. Yet, the allure persists. And curiously, hints continue to emerge that fuel the imagination. Explorations around the Sphinx, particularly in the late 20th century, revealed anomalies beneath the bedrock. Unexplained cavities detected by seismic surveys. Some interpreted these as natural fissures. Others whispered they were chambers, long sealed, exactly where Cayce had said they would be. The fact that these anomalies remain largely unexplored only deepens the mystery. Why not investigate fully if there is nothing to hide? The idea of a hole of records also resonates with humanity on a deeper level. Every civilization has imagined archives of lost wisdom. The Library of Alexandria, burned into legend, the scrolls of Qumran, hidden in desert caves, even medieval tales of secret grimoires locked away by the church. To imagine that the Sphinx guards such a treasure is to place Egypt within this universal yearning, the hope that somewhere, preserved against time, lies the truth of who we are and where we came from. But perhaps the hole of records need not be a literal library of scrolls. Perhaps it is symbolic, a metaphor left for us by the ancients. The Sphinx itself may be the record, a monument encoded with geometry, astronomy, and myth, a stone book written not with words but with form and alignment. The idea that ancient builders encoded knowledge in architecture is not far-fetched. Many cultures did precisely this. If so, then the hole of records is not buried beneath the Sphinx, but revealed by it, to those with eyes to see. Still, the dream of a hidden chamber endures, because it satisfies both our hunger for mystery and our hope for revelation. Imagine, for a moment, that the hole of records is real. Imagine archaeologists descending into a chamber untouched for millennia, the air heavy with the dust of ages. They uncover sealed sarcophagi, golden relics, and tablets inscribed with histories older than Egypt itself. They find maps of continents as they once were, blueprint of machines that defy our understanding, and prophesies that speak of cycles of rise and fall, civilizations born, destroyed, and reborn. If such a discovery were made, it would shake the foundations of every field of knowledge: history, religion, archaeology, even physics. Religions might crumble or transform. Our sense of identity as a species would be rewritten. For this reason, some whisper that the hole of records, if it exists, is deliberately concealed not just by stone, but by powers, earthly and otherwise, that no humanity is not yet ready. Yet secrecy breeds curiosity. The more the idea is dismissed, the more people suspect truth hides behind the denial. If the hole of records truly lies beneath the Sphinx, then the monument is not merely a guardian of Egypt's past. It is a sentinel watching over humanity's future. The question that lingers is simple yet profound. What if the ancients left us a message, a record meant for us, hidden until the time was right? And what if that time is drawing near? As we stand at the edge of climate change, technological upheaval, and global transformation, the idea that ancient wisdom might rise from the sands feels less like myth and more like destiny. The whole of records remains both legend and possibility, suspended between skepticism and faith. Perhaps it is buried stone upon stone beneath the paws of the Sphinx, waiting to be unearthed. Perhaps it is a symbol, urging us to seek wisdom within ourselves. Either way, the myth persists, not because it is proven, but because it speaks to something timeless, the hope that knowledge survives, hidden but not lost, awaiting the moment when we are ready to learn. From the earliest dynasties, the Egyptians held that knowledge was not something to be scattered freely like seeds in the wind. Instead, wisdom was sacred, and only the worthy were permitted to bear it. The guardianship of knowledge was seen as a divine responsibility, a sacred chain of transmission stretching from gods to kings, from priests to initiates. At the heart of this belief lay the conviction that hidden truths, especially those concerning life, death, and the cosmos, had the power to both elevate and destroy. In the wrong hands, such wisdom could invite chaos. In the right hands, it could maintain order, balance, and cosmic harmony. To understand this, one must enter the world of the Egyptian priesthood. Far more than caretakers of temples, the priests were scholars, astronomers, healers, and magicians. They preserved complex calendars that tracked the stars, mastered rituals that aligned human life with cosmic cycles, and guarded texts that explained the mysteries of the gods. The temples were not merely houses of worship. They were schools, libraries, and observatories, where initiates slowly earned the right to approach deeper truths. Access was never immediate. Knowledge was unveiled step by step, layer by layer, ensuring that only the disciplined and pure-hearted would ascend to the higher mysteries. But Egypt's priests were not the only ones entrusted with this guardianship. Pharaohs themselves, believed to be divine intermediaries, also bore the weight of secrecy. The king was seen as Horus on earth, son of the gods, protector of Mat, the sacred balance of the universe. With that role came responsibilities that went far beyond ruling armies or collecting taxes. Pharaohs were custodians of cosmic order. Some secrets, particularly concerning the afterlife and the origin of divine kingship, were kept within the royal circle, passed down in initiation rites whispered from father to son. These were not meant for the common people, who were to live in or rather than comprehension. It is in this context that the notion of hidden chambers and forbidden texts gains resonance. If wisdom was so carefully guarded, is it any wonder that the Egyptians might have chosen to conceal their most precious records beneath the ground, sealed away from profane eyes? The Sphinx, looming silent and eternal, would be a perfect sentinel for such a repository. Its inhuman gaze would serve as both warning and invitation. Seek only if you are worthy. Legends across cultures reinforce this theme of guardianship. In Greek tradition, the Sphinx posed a riddle at the gates of Thebes, allowing only those with knowledge to pass. In Jewish law, wisdom was sealed within the Ark of the Covenant, hidden deep within the temple. In India, sacred mantras were reserved only for the initiated, forbidden to be spoken aloud by the untrained. Time and again, cultures across the ancient world converged on the same idea: not all knowledge was for all people. There must always be guardians. The Egyptians seem to have institutionalized this concept. Their hieroglyphs themselves were once seen as magical, a script that only the initiated could decipher. Early Greeks marveled at the priest's control over such knowledge, interpreting their rites as magic beyond mortal comprehension. Even centuries later, when Greek philosophers studied in Egypt, they reported that access to deeper truths was limited, guarded behind veils of secrecy. The notion of mystery schools, where initiates underwent trials and symbolic death to unenlightenment, may well have originated in the sanctuaries of the Nile. But guardianship also carries with it an undertone of danger. If priests and kings held such exclusive power, how did they keep it from falling into the wrong hands? There are whispers of betrayals, of priests punished for revealing sacred rites, of temples destroyed when knowledge was misused, of rulers erased from history for daring to break the code of silence. The practice of damnatio memoriae, erasing a pharaoh's name from monuments, was not only political but spiritual, an attempt to cut off their access to eternity. Could it be that some of these erasures were punishments for tampering with forbidden truths? Modern researchers have drawn parallels between this ancient guardianship and the enduring myths of the Hall of Records. If a hidden library does exist beneath the Sphinx, then surely it would not have been left unprotected. Perhaps guardianship was not only symbolic but physical. Secret societies, hidden sects, are later custodians charged with ensuring that the knowledge remains sealed until the appointed time. Some theorists even argue that remnants of these guardians survived long after Egypt declined, blending into mystical orders, transmitting fragments of wisdom through cryptic symbols and rituals that echo across history. One cannot overlook the emotional weight of this idea. To imagine a line of guardians stretching back thousands of years is to imagine human beings dedicating their entire lives to protecting knowledge they might never use themselves. Their duty was not for personal gain, but for the preservation of humanity's future. There is something profoundly moving about such sacrifice, generations living and dying in silence, keeping watch over a truth they could not reveal. And yet, guardianship is never eternal. The passage of time erodes secrets as surely as it erodes stone. Perhaps this is why rumors of the whole of records continue to surface. Perhaps the guardians failed, or perhaps their time is ending, and the secrets they preserved are destined to emerge. If so, then we may stand on the threshold of a revelation carefully prepared over millennia. Still, the question lingers, who were these guardians really? Were they flesh and blood priests and pharaohs, their loyalty sworn by ritual and oath? Were they symbolic archetypes, woven into myth to remind us that wisdom demands responsibility? Or were they something stranger still, a lineage that transcends culture and time, reaching from the deep past into our present day? As we consider these possibilities, the Sphinx looms larger, not just a stone but a symbol. If the whole of records exists, then the Sphinx is its guardian. And if the Sphinx is a guardian, then we are the ones standing at its gates, riddles unasked, answers waiting. The guardians of sacred knowledge may have passed the torch, silently, across the centuries. The question is whether we are worthy to receive it. Beneath the grandeur of Egypt's well-known pharaohs, Khufu, Ramses, Akhenaten, Tutankhamun, lies a shadowed history rarely spoken of. These are the stories of rulers who slipped through the cracks of time, their reigns obscured, their names erased, their monuments left in ruin. Yet it is often in the forgotten dynasties that the strangest mysteries of Egypt dwell. For if secrets were ever hidden away, secrets too dangerous or too sacred for the world to know, perhaps they were entrusted to those whose names were destined to vanish. Egypt's official timeline presents an image of continuity, one pharaoh handing the crown to the next in an unbroken chain across 30 dynasties. But the deeper one digs, the more fractures appear. Gaps litter the record. Dynasties overlap, regions divide, and rival kings rule simultaneously, each claiming divine authority. The so-called intermediate periods of Egyptian history are particularly murky, centuries when the land fell into chaos, foreign rulers took power, or local warlords carved up the Nile. These are the forgotten dynasties, overshadowed by the brilliance of the Old, Middle, and New Kingdoms. Take, for instance, the first intermediate period, a time when central authority collapsed after the Old Kingdom's decline. Local governors, called nomarchs, held sway, and rival dynasties in Heracleopolis and Thebes vied for control. Their monuments were modest compared to the pyramids, and their achievements easily drowned beneath the sands. Yet some researchers suspect this period concealed innovations and shifts in spiritual thought that would later influence Egypt's grand revival. Could it also have been a time when hidden chambers were constructed, less visible, less monumental, but more secretive? Then there's the second intermediate period, when the Hyksos, foreign rulers possibly from the Levant, seized control of Lower Egypt. They introduced new weapons, horses, and chariots, reshaping Egyptian warfare. To the traditional priesthood, this period must have been seen as a violation, outsiders sitting on the throne of Horus. In such turbulent times, it would make sense to conceal sacred relics, sealing them away until Egypt was restored. Perhaps the guardians of knowledge, unable to protect their treasures openly, chose instead to bury them beneath monuments that even conquerors dared not desecrate, monuments like the Sphinx. And in the third intermediate period, another shadow falls. Egypt was divided, its power weakened. Libyan chiefs and later Nubian kings claimed the throne, while priests of Amun and Thebes wielded authority equal to pharaohs. Records from this time are sparse, temples abandoned, tombs looted. Yet it is in silence that mysteries thrive. Imagine a line of priests, knowing their civilization was crumbling, choosing to secure what mattered most, knowledge. They could place it underground, in labyrinths or hidden libraries, confident that stone would outlast a rise and fall of dynasties. What makes these forgotten dynasties particularly intriguing is a pattern of erasure. Names and records vanish not merely from neglect, but often from deliberate removal. Pharaohs who defied tradition, like Akhenaten, who raised the sun disk 18 above all gods, were erased by successors who considered their ideas dangerous. Could it be that knowledge considered too radical, too destabilizing, was also hidden away rather than destroyed? If so, the Sphinx's rumored chambers might not only contain wisdom from Egypt's golden ages, but also the forbidden truths of rulers whose visions threatened the established order. Even mainstream archaeology acknowledges gaps in Egypt's history. The Palermo stone, an ancient chronicle, contains references to predynastic rulers, kings of a time before Egypt was formally united. Manetho, the Egyptian priest writing in the Ptolemaic era, preserved lists of kings stretching back into mythical prehistory, even mentioning gods and spirits of the dead ruling before human pharaohs. These lists blur the boundary between myth and history. Were these merely legends or memories of dynasties so ancient they predate our concept of history itself? Here lies the heart of the mystery. If Egypt's own priests spoke of forgotten ages, why should we not take them seriously? Perhaps the Sphinx, with its weathered body and enigmatic face, was already ancient even in their time, a relic from those shadowed dynasties whose names are lost. Some modern researchers suggest the Sphinx may date back far earlier than the 4th dynasty, its weathering caused not by wind but by water, implying construction during a wetter, prehistoric age. If true, then the Sphinx may be a monument of a forgotten civilization, one whose records would indeed need to be hidden for a future age to uncover. To consider this possibility is to step into unsettling territory. What if beneath the sands of Giza lies not just Egypt history, but pre-Egyptian history? What if the forgotten dynasties include cultures we cannot name, whose knowledge, technology, and myths flowed into the Nile Valley and seeded the greatness of pharaonic Egypt? The erasures and silences of the historical record may not be accidents, but deliberate veils drawn over truths too destabilizing to reveal. The forgotten dynasties remind us that history is never complete. What we see is only what survives, the stone that endures, the names that were not erased, the stories retold by victors. But beneath the surface lies another history, erased, fragmented, deliberately hidden. And it is in this subterranean realm of memory that the Sphinx's mystery belongs. Perhaps the guardians of sacred knowledge entrusted their records not to the famous kings whose names echo in textbooks, but to the forgotten ones, ensuring that when the day of revelation came, the truth would arrive untainted by power or pride. And so the Sphinx crouches still, its body scarred by time, its gaze fixed upon eternity. Was it raised by a forgotten dynasty, or by hands even older, from a civilization lost to floods and fire? The answer may lie not in the history we know, but in the history that was buried, history kept in silence by those who vanished but left behind a sentinel carved in stone. Long before the first stone of the pyramids was laid, long before the Nile's predictable flood shaped the destiny of a civilization, the people of the ancient world told stories of a flood so great it nearly erased humanity itself. These stories did not belong only to Egypt. They echo across continents, whispered in different tongues, yet carrying the same haunting refrain. Once, long ago, the world drowned, and only a remnant survived to begin again. In Mesopotamia, carved into cuneiform tablets, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, warned by the gods of a coming deluge. He built a vast boat, filled it with animals and family, and endured the flood that swallowed kingdoms. In the Hebrew Bible, Noah follows a similar command, preserving life upon an ark as waters consume the world. In India, the Vedic story of Manu describes a wise man saved by a divine fish who guided his boat through cosmic waters. Even in far-off lands, among the Mayans, the Norse, and the Pacific Islanders, the legend returns again and again. Egypt, too, was not immune to such tales. Though its people relied upon the annual, life-giving flood of the Nile, older myths suggest they carried within the memory the shadow of a flood far greater, one not of renewal but of destruction. Texts from the coffin and pyramid corpus make cryptic references to waters of chaos overwhelming creation, waters that the sun god Ra had to rise above to restore order. Later Greek accounts, including those of Plato, connected Egypt to an even more startling tradition, the tale of Atlantis. Plato, writing in the 4th century BCE, claimed Egyptian priests told the story of a mighty island civilization beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Atlantis, they said, had grown proud and corrupt, warring against the Mediterranean world until it was destroyed in a single day and night of floods and earthquakes. According to Plato, the priests explained that this disaster occurred thousands of years earlier, before Greek memory, and that Egypt itself had preserved the knowledge of these cycles of catastrophe. The Nile, they hinted, had protected Egypt from complete destruction, while other lands perished. Hey, the legend of the flood intersects with the mystery of the Sphinx. If Atlantis, or some lost civilization, truly existed, where did its survivors go? If Egypt's priests remembered a flood that consumed the world, might they also have inherited the wisdom of those who escaped? The whole of records, as Casey and others have claimed, could be precisely this, a preserved archive of knowledge saved from a pre-flood world, hidden beneath stone guardians to endure until humanity was ready once more. What makes this theory so compelling is the geological evidence some researchers point to. The Sphinx, with its deep weathering, shows signs, at least according to certain geologists, of erosion caused not by wind and sand, but by water. Heavy, prolonged rainfall, the kind not seen in Egypt since the end of the last ice age, may have carved those scars into the limestone. If true, then the Sphinx predates the dynastic Egyptians by thousands of years, perhaps stretching back to a time when torrential rains followed the melting of glacier. If the Sphinx truly belongs to that prehistoric era, then it was born in the shadow of the flood, or by survivors who endured it. Skeptics argue these claims are leaps of imagination. They say the water erosion theory is flawed, the flood myths are symbolic, and Plato's Atlantis was an allegory, not history. Yet the global consistency of flood traditions raises questions too difficult to dismiss. Why would so many cultures, separated by oceans, remember the same kind of disaster? Could there have been a real event, a rising of seas, a sudden cataclysm, that scarred the human memory so deeply it became myth wherever people lived? Modern science provides intriguing possibilities. Around 10,000 BCE, as the Ice Age ended, sea levels rose dramatically, swallowing coastlines worldwide. Entire land bridges disappeared, submerging ancient settlements beneath the waves. The Black Sea, for instance, is believed by some researchers to have flooded catastrophically when the Mediterranean breached its barrier. Such events, magnified through oral tradition, could easily have seeded the stories of floods passed down for millennia. If this is true, then the flood legends are not mere fables but echoes of real cataclysms witnessed by our distant ancestors. And where do these echoes lead? To the same haunting question: who survived, and what did they preserve? The Egyptians may have inherited more than fertile soil from the Nile. They may have inherited memory. Their myths of chaos waters, their insistence on preserving cosmic order, their obsession with death and rebirth, all may be cultural responses to an ancient trauma, a flood that nearly erased humanity but also forced survivors to cling desperately to knowledge, preserving it against future collapse. The Sphinx, crouched to the edge of the desert, may be more than a symbol of kingship or solar devotion. It may be a monument to survival, a sentinel raised by those who remembered the flood and refused to let their wisdom vanish. If so, then its rumored chambers are not just tombs but arks of knowledge, holding records of a world drowned by waters, waiting for a time when their lessons are needed again. This possibility casts the flood legends in a new light. What if they are not only memories of disaster but warnings? What if the whole of records, if it exists, contains not only the past but also prophesies of cycles yet to come? Many ancient traditions, from the Mayan long count calendar to Hindu yugas, describe history not as linear but cyclical, with ages of rise and collapse repeating endlessly. If the flood was one such cycle, another may yet await us. The guardians of knowledge may have hidden their records not only to preserve the past but to prepare us for the future. And so the flood, remembered in so many voices across the world, becomes more than a tale of loss. It becomes a thread connecting civilizations, a reminder that humanity has faced destruction before and endured. The Sphinx, with its enigmatic silence, may stand as both witness and warning. We are not the first, and we may not be the last. Atlantis. The name itself conjures images of a lost world, glittering temples, and a civilization of incredible wisdom that vanished beneath the waves. Though it first appears in the writings of Plato, the legend has never truly faded. Instead, it has grown into one of humanity's greatest mysteries, casting its shadow across history, myth, and archaeology. For some, Atlantis is nothing more than an allegory, a tale invented to warn against the dangers of pride and corruption. But for others, it is a memory of a real civilization, advanced beyond its time, whose survivors may have seeded the great cultures of the ancient world. Plato's account, written in Timaeus and Critias around 360 BC, is detailed enough to spark centuries of debate. He described Atlantis as an island empire larger than Libya and Asia combined, situated beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. It was a land of extraordinary engineering, with concentric rings of land and sea connected by bridges and canals. Its people mastered agriculture, architecture, and seafaring, building palaces adorned with precious metals and raising temples to the god Poseidon. Yet this greatness was matched by arrogance. According to Plato, the Atlanteans turned from virtue to greed, seeking to dominate the Mediterranean world. In response, the gods punished them. In a single day and night of floods and earthquakes, the mighty island sank beneath the sea, leaving only legend behind. For centuries, scholars have debated whether Plato invented the story or preserved an ancient tradition passed to him by Egyptian priests. As we saw in the flood legends, Egypt was said to hold the oldest records of humanity's past. Could Atlantis have been one of those records, a story of a real people destroyed by cataclysm, remembered by survivors who fled to safer lands? The Egyptians, with their sudden rise to monumental architecture and sophisticated knowledge, are often suggested as inheritors of Atlantean wisdom. The Hall of Records, if it exists beneath the Sphinx, may be the very vault where that memory was preserved. This possibility gains strength when considered alongside the mysterious water erosion of the Sphinx. If the monument predates the dynastic Egyptians, it might have been built by survivors of an earlier world, one destroyed by floods. To many alternative historians, this aligns perfectly with the fate of Atlantis. When the sea consumed their homeland, the survivors carried their knowledge across the globe, seeding civilization from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, and perhaps leaving their greatest legacy in Egypt, a land stable enough to preserve their wisdom for millennia. The echoes of Atlantis are not confined to Plato alone. Across the world, there are legends of lost land swallowed by the sea. The Celtic myths of Lyonesse and Hy Brazil speak of islands west of Europe that sank into the waves. In India, Tamil traditions describe Kumori Kandam, a vast sunken land south of the subcontinent. In Japan, tales of the dragon's palace beneath the sea recall a vanished coastal civilization. Even in the Americas, stories of drowned cities and lost homeland surface among indigenous peoples. Could all these stories be cultural fragments of one great event, the memory of a civilization like Atlantis destroyed in a global cataclysm? Modern science offers intriguing context. Around 10,000 BCE, at the end of the Ice Age, sea levels rose by nearly 400 feet, flooding vast coastal plains. Entire continental shelves, where human settlements once stood, vanished beneath the ocean. Satellite surveys and underwater archaeology are beginning to reveal submerged structures in places like the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and off the coast of India. While not all are confirmed to be human-made, their presence fuels speculation. What if Atlantis was simply one of many advanced coastal cultures erased by the sea? Skeptics argue that Plato's story is allegorical. They claim it mirrors the destruction of the Minoan civilization on Crete, devastated by a volcanic eruption and tsunami around 1600 BCE. Yet even if Atlantis was not literal, the power of the myth persists. Why? Because it speaks to something deep in the human psyche, the fear that greatness can be undone in an instant, that civilizations, no matter how mighty, are fragile before nature's fury. And yet, for those who see truth in the tale, Atlantis is more than a warning. It is a clue. If such a civilization existed, its knowledge, in astronomy, engineering, and spiritual understanding, may not have been lost entirely. Survivors could have carried fragments of it to lands like Egypt, embedding it in temples, monuments, and myths. The Sphinx, enigmatic and timeless, could be one such vessel, guarding the transition between worlds, the drowned world of Atlantis and the reborn world of dynastic Egypt. Theosophists, mystics, and visionaries like Edgar Cayce took this even further. Cayce claimed that Atlantis was real, located in the Atlantic Ocean, and that its survivors had records beneath the Sphinx to guide future humanity. He predicted that the whole of records would be discovered when humanity was ready to use its wisdom responsibly. According to Cayce, this knowledge included not only history but advanced technologies, perhaps even the key to understanding energy, healing, and the cycles of the earth itself. Whether one views these claims as revelation or fantasy, they highlight the enduring allure of Atlantis. It is not just a story of a lost land. It is a story of human potential. It asks us to consider whether we are the first to climb so high, or whether we are walking paths already trodden by forgotten ancestors. It challenges us to look at ruins like the pyramids and the Sphinx and ask, are these the works of Egypt alone, or are they echoes of an older, greater world? The mystery of Atlantis lingers because it resonates with both our hopes and our fears. It embodies a dream of a golden age of wisdom and harmony, but also the nightmare of hubris and collapse. It reminds us that oceans can rise, that the earth can shift, and that entire worlds can vanish. But it also whispers that knowledge, once gained, can be hidden, preserved, and rediscovered. The Sphinx, silent and eternal, may be the last echo of Atlantis. If the whole of records exists, then perhaps within its sealed chambers lie the voices of a lost world, waiting to speak again. And if so, then the legend of Atlantis is not just a story. It is history, buried in stone, waiting for us to uncover it. For centuries, the Sphinx has been more than stone. To believers in hidden truths, it is a gate, one that conceals doors and chambers barred from ordinary eyes. These forbidden chambers form one of the most tantalizing strands in the web of Egyptian mystery. They are whispered about in legends, suggested in ancient texts, hinted at in the writings of explorers, and even touched upon by modern scanning technology. Yet they remain out of reach, sealed beneath tons of limestone and sand, as if Egypt itself has conspired to protect them. The notion of hidden chambers is not new. Ancient Egyptian belief systems were built around thresholds, tombs, temples, and sanctuaries often contained false doors, secret passageways, and hidden rooms where only priests could enter. This architecture was not simply practical, it was symbolic. A hidden chamber represented the unseen world, the place where life and death met, where gods moved unseen among mortals. When one looks at the Sphinx, it is not hard to imagine that such logic was applied on a monumental scale. Why would such a colossal guardian exist without something vital to protect? Historical accounts from Greek and Arab travelers often mention sealed doors and vault beneath or around the Sphinx. Omar Creasy, a medieval Egyptian historian, described inscriptions hinting at subterranean spaces beneath the plateau. Other Arab chroniclers wrote of secret tunnels that connected the Sphinx to the pyramids, forming a labyrinth of hidden pathways. These accounts may be exaggerated, but they strike at a deeper truth. The Sphinx was always regarded as more than it appeared. In the modern era, explorers and archaeologists reignited these suspicions. In the early 20th century, the French engineer Émile Barrois conducted extensive excavations around the Sphinx. His workers uncovered shafts and cavities near the monument, some of which were sealed or filled with debris. Though little was published, rumors quickly spread. Had Barrois stumbled onto something too explosive to reveal? Later, in the 1990s, seismographic surveys conducted by a team including Thomas DeBecky and John Anthony West revealed anomalies beneath the Sphinx's paws and along its flanks, spaces that appeared hollow, as if rooms were buried within the bedrock itself. To believers, this was the strongest evidence yet that the forbidden chambers were real. The Egyptian authorities, however, remained cautious. The idea of unexplored chambers beneath such a sacred symbol was explosive, not only for archaeology but for national pride. Official statements dismissed many of the claims, yet the silence that followed often fueled the fire. Conspiracy theories thrived. Perhaps something had been discovered and deliberately hidden, or perhaps permissions to excavate were withheld to keep the world from truths too disruptive to accept. The very lack of answers turned the Sphinx into a magnet for speculation. The forbidden nature of these chambers is not merely about physical inaccessibility. It is also psychological. They represent a boundary between what humanity longs to know and what it fears to uncover. If such chambers exist, what might they contain? The possibilities are endless. Lost texts from Egypt's earliest dynasties, treasures sealed away to protect them from invaders, or, more controversially, records of civilizations that predated Egypt itself. These possibilities resonate with the legends of Atlantis, with cases whole of records, and with every whispered rumor of ancient knowledge hidden from the present. But to consider the forbidden chambers only as vaults of treasure is to miss their symbolic weight. They are reminders of how much we do not know. Every culture builds myths about doors we are not meant to open, Pandora's box, the sealed tomb, the hidden library. The Sphinx's supposed chambers are the Egyptian version of this archetype, a place where knowledge and danger intertwine. To enter is to risk finding truths that may unsettle the foundations of what we believe about history, faith, or human potential. The very idea of forbidden chambers also suggests guardianship. If the Sphinx protects something, what lengths were taken to ensure that it could not be casually reached? Were the chambers sealed with traps, like those found in the Valley of the Kings, where false corridors and hidden shafts were designed to confuse and kill intruders? Were inscriptions or curses carved into their walls to ward off the curious? Such details may sound like the stuff of adventure tales, yet they draw directly from Egyptian tradition, where sacred spaces were always protected both physically and spiritually. The 21st century has added new tools to this mystery. Advances in non-invasive scanning, muon tomography, ground-penetrating radar, and 3D seismic imaging have been applied to the Giza plateau. While official results remain cautious, some scans appear to confirm anomalies consistent with hidden voids beneath the Sphinx. The possibility remains tantalizingly unresolved. We may be on the verge of proving that these chambers exist, yet political, cultural, and ethical barriers prevent us from drilling or excavating to confirm. Thus, the chambers remain forbidden not only by ancient stone but by modern restraint. To many, this raises a haunting thought. What if the Sphinx has succeeded in its role as guardian? What if, after thousands of years, the secrets it protects remain beyond our reach because we are not yet ready to face them? This interpretation gives the Sphinx a living presence, not just a statue, but a timeless sentinel that continues to withhold its mysteries. The forbidden chambers, whether real or imagined, embody the essence of the Sphinx's enigma. They are the reason people still travel from across the world to stand in its shadow, to gaze into its weathered face, and to wonder what lies beneath. For every tourist snapping photos, there are others who stare in silence, sensing something more, a riddle too vast to solve, hidden in the earth itself. And so, the chambers remain locked away. Are they empty, or are they filled with the wisdom of lost ages? Do they hold nothing but stone and sand, or do they guard the greatest revelations of human history? The answer lies beneath the Sphinx, sealed in silence. Until it is revealed, the forbidden chambers are less a place than an idea, the eternal reminder that the past still keeps its secrets. Every civilization that has ever left its mark upon the earth has wrestled with one haunting truth. Knowledge is power, and power can be both creation and destruction. The Egyptians knew this better than most. For them, wisdom was sacred, a gift of the gods, and it was never to be given lightly. To protect that wisdom, they devised guardians, both human and divine, who ensured that the deepest truths of their civilization would remain beyond the grasp of the unworthy. The legend of hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx cannot be told without also speaking of these guardians of the past. In Egyptian belief, guardianship was both practical and spiritual. Temples, tombs, and sacred texts were never left unprotected. Statues of jackals, lions, and falcons stood at entrances, symbols of the deities who defended the boundaries between the mortal and the divine. Hieroglyphs carved curses upon stone, warning intruders that trespass would bring sickness, blindness, or death. Priests, trained from childhood, served as living custodians, not merely reciting rituals but preserving the knowledge handed down through generations. The guardianship was layered, stone, spirit, and blood alike. The Sphinx itself is the ultimate guardian. Carved with the body of a lion and the face of a king, it embodies both strength and intellect. To many, it is not simply a statue but a sentinel, placed to watch over whatever lies behind or beneath it. The lion was Egypt's timeless symbol of protection, of vigilance against chaos. By giving the lion a human head, perhaps the visage of Pharaoh Khafre, perhaps someone older still, the builders imbued it with reason as well as power. The Sphinx does not simply guard, it judges. Its gaze has watched millennia of pilgrims, conquerors, and seekers pass before it, measuring their worth without a word. But if there are indeed forbidden chambers beneath the Sphinx, then one must ask, who were the guardians of what lay within? Were they priests sworn to secrecy, their lineages carefully maintained across dynasties? Were they rulers who considered themselves chosen stewards of wisdom too dangerous for the masses? Ancient Egyptian society was hierarchical, and knowledge was its greatest currency. Only the highest-ranking priests and pharaohs had access to the full mysteries of the temples. Ordinary citizens worshipped the gods, but only the initiated knew the rituals that fed those gods with power. If sacred records were buried beneath the Sphinx, they would have been entrusted to the highest guardians Egypt could provide. Legends from later periods suggest that guardianship extended beyond flesh and blood. Medieval Arab chroniclers often described the Sphinx and pyramids as protected by hidden traps, mechanical marvels, and even spirits bound to defend the sites. In one tale, a traveler who attempted to enter the Sphinx at night was driven away by strange lights and a deafening hum from within the stone. Whether these accounts were superstition or echoes of real experiences, they reflect a consistent belief: the guardianship was alive, not merely symbolic. The concept of guardianship also transcends Egypt itself. In every great culture, knowledge was veiled and protected. In Mesopotamia, the Apkallu, semi-divine beings, were said to guard the wisdom of the gods, delivering fragments of it to humankind. In Greece, the oracle at Delphi spoke in riddles to shield divine truths from those unprepared to understand. In India, the Nagas, serpent deities, were said to guard hidden treasures in scriptures. The Egyptians, with their obsession with balance between order and chaos, fit neatly into this global archetype. The guardianship of the past was a universal theme, because humanity has always feared what might happen if knowledge fell into the wrong hands. Modern theories about hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx often raise the same point. If advanced records truly lie sealed in stone, why have they not been uncovered? Why has fate, accident, or archaeology not revealed them? Perhaps the answer lies not in coincidence, but in design. Perhaps the guardianship was meant to last until humanity reached a stage where it could wield such knowledge without self-destruction. This idea resonates strongly with the prophecy-like statements of mystics such as Edgar Cayce, who claimed that the whole of records would be revealed only when humanity was ready. It paints the guardians not as jailers, but as protectors, withholding a gift until the world proves itself worthy. And yet, guardianship always comes with tension. Secrets too tightly held can be lost forever. What if the records beneath the Sphinx, if they exist, have already crumbled into dust, sealed away too long? What if the guardianship, once necessary, has condemned humanity to ignorance? This is a paradox of the guardians of the past. They preserve, but they also withhold. They protect, but they also deny. The Sphinx's silence is at once noble and cruel, offering us only the riddle of its existence. When visitors stand before the Sphinx today, they often feel something difficult to describe: a weight, an atmosphere of solemnity. Guides may speak of history, tourists may snap photos, but in the silence between words, there is an undeniable sense of being watched. It is as though the Sphinx itself is alive, not in flesh but in spirit, carrying out its eternal duty. For those who believe in the guardians of the past, this is no coincidence. The stone sentinel is a guardian, and the chambers beneath it remain forbidden because it wills them so. The guardianship of the Sphinx, whether literal or symbolic, embodies one of humanity's oldest lessons. Not all knowledge is free, and not all doors should be opened lightly. It forces us to confront our own hunger for secrets and our own fear of what we might find. And it asks a haunting question: are we truly ready to inherit what the past has hidden for us? The forbidden chambers may one day open. But until that day comes, the guardians, whether priestly, spiritual, or carved from stone itself, hold the line between past and present, and in their silence, they remind us that some truths can shape or shatter the world. Every mystery has its threshold, a point where curiosity collides with silence. For the enigma of the Sphinx, that threshold is embodied in what many call the sealed doors of time. These are not doors we can see with our eyes, but rather the persistent accounts of hidden entrances, carved in limestone, buried in sand, or concealed by centuries of erosion. They are the gateways, real or imagined, that promise to lead from the world we know into the unknown depths of the past. Ancient accounts describe these entrances with remarkable specificity. Arab chroniclers of the Middle Ages spoke of concealed doors at the base of the Sphinx, so perfectly blended into the stone that only the most trained eye could detect them. Some claimed these doors led to passages winding deep beneath the Giza plateau, where secret chambers connected to the pyramids themselves. One tale recounts a ruler who attempted to force open one of these hidden doors, only to be driven back by a sudden storm, as if the elements themselves were conspiring against him. Whether literal or allegorical, the story reinforces a notion that certain thresholds are not meant to be crossed without permission. Even modern explorers have reported signs that hint at entrances long sealed. Early photographs and sketches from the 19th century depict faint rectangular outlines on the body of the Sphinx, particularly near its paws and flanks. Were these natural fissures, or traces of human handiwork smoothed by time? In the 1920s and 1930s, restoration work occasionally exposed odd cavities in the limestone bedrock, leading some to believe that doors once existed but were deliberately closed with infill stone and plaster. These tantalizing fragments add weight to the idea that hidden entrances may still be concealed beneath the layers of restoration. The phrase sealed doors of time is not just poetic, it describes a deliberate act of withholding. In Egyptian tradition, doors were symbols of passage between worlds. A false door carved on the wall of a tomb was not meant to be opened physically but spiritually, allowing the deceased soul to pass between life and afterlife. If real doors exist beneath the Sphinx, they may have been sealed not to prevent entry but to mark them as sacred boundaries. To pass through them would mean to trespass into spaces reserved for gods or the chosen few. But what lies beyond such doors? Legends suggest treasure, archives of lost knowledge, or even artifacts from civilizations that predate Egypt itself. More skeptical voices argue that any chambers beyond the doors will be empty, intended only for ritual symbolism. Yet the very act of sealing them transforms their meaning. A sealed door is a promise that something once lay within, valuable enough to hide, dangerous enough to protect. Seismographic surveys conducted in the 1990s revealed anomalies beneath the Sphinx that could correspond to cavities or tunnels. Some researchers claim these anomalies align with the areas where ancient texts describe hidden entrances. The correlation fuels speculation. Are we looking at the sealed doors of time, waiting for modern science to confirm what myth has whispered all along? Official statements remain cautious, often dismissing such findings as misinterpretations. Yet the silence of authorities often feels like another layer of sealing, an attempt to keep curiosity contained. The very idea of sealed doors also resonates on a symbolic level. They remind us of the fragility of memory. When a door is closed and forgotten, what lies behind it is no longer part of the present. It becomes trapped in its own moment, preserved yet unreachable. This is why the Sphinx's supposed doors capture the imagination so powerfully. They are not just entrances to stone corridors, but to forgotten eras, untouched by the flow of history. To open them would be to step outside of time itself, to encounter voices silenced for thousands of years. Of course, doors are not only about entry, they are about exclusion. To seal a door is to declare that certain knowledge is not for everyone. Ancient priests and kings may have believed that the truths hidden beneath the Sphinx were too dangerous, too sacred, or too destabilizing to be revealed. If so, then the sealed doors of time were acts of guardianship, preserving humanity from truths that could shatter its fragile order. Yet we must also wonder, how much of our ignorance today is a result of such choices? What wisdom has been denied to us, perhaps forever, because a door was closed and the key lost? There is also the unsettling thought that some doors should never be opened. History is filled with examples of discoveries that unleash chaos, weapons forged from hidden knowledge, technologies born before their time. Could the sealed chambers beneath the Sphinx contain not treasures but warnings, knowledge deliberately entombed so that future generations would not repeat the mistakes of the past? The idea transforms a door from tantalizing promises into grim reminders. Not all mysteries should be solved. Yet humanity is rarely content with sealed doors. Curiosity drives us, sometimes recklessly, to seek what lies beyond. From Schliemann uncovering Troy to Howard Carter breaking the seal of Tutankhamun's tomb, history has shown that barriers only ignite our determination to cross them. The Sphinx, with its rumored hidden entrances, stands as the ultimate challenge, the oldest sealed door of them all. And like every riddle, it seems to beckon us closer even as it warns us away. Perhaps that is the true power of the Sphinx's mystery. Whether or not literal doors exist, the concept of threshold hidden in stone forces us to confront our own relationship with time, secrecy, and discovery. Each sealed door is both a promise and a test. What would we do if it opened? Would we be ready for what waited beyond? Or would the act of opening itself undo us? For now, the doors remain shut, their secrets intact. The Sphinx sits in silence, its gaze unbroken, as if guarding the locks itself. And as we stand before it, the questions echo louder than answers. Is the past truly gone, or merely sealed away? And if we ever break the seal, will we find the truth we seek, or a burden we are not prepared to bear? Every monument speaks, though not in word but in vibrations, whispers, and the subtle music of stone. The Great Sphinx, weathered by millennia yet still unbroken, is no exception. Those who stand before it in the quiet of dawn or the hush of midnight often claim to hear more than the desert wind. They describe faint murmurs, echoes carried through the limestone, as if the very rock were remembering and retelling the stories of ages past. These are the echoes in the stone, mysterious phenomena that bridge the physical with the metaphysical, binding the Sphinx not just a history, but to a living resonance. Some of the earliest reports come from ancient travelers who believed that the Sphinx itself could speak. In Greek tradition, the Sphinx was a creature of riddles, a guardian who challenged those who passed with questions that tested their worth. While the Egyptian Sphinx of Giza was not recorded as speaking directly, tales suggest that priests once listened to the winds around its head and paws, interpreting the sounds as divine messages. Even Herodotus hinted that the Egyptians believed great monuments were alive in some way, retaining the essence of those who built them. To hear the echoes was to hear voices of the gods themselves. Modern science has given us another perspective. Acoustic studies on the Giza Plateau have shown that sound travels differently within and around the Sphinx. The limestone cavities, fissures, and hollows beneath its body can act like resonating chambers, amplifying certain frequencies while muffling others. When struck or when wind passes through tiny cracks, the stone can produce low, humming vibrations, tones deep enough to be felt in the chest rather than heard with the ears. Researchers who have tested these acoustic properties note that such sounds often create an uncanny sense of presence, as if the monument itself were alive and breathing. But the echoes are not merely physical. Legends abound of strange experiences tied to them. Workers during 19th and early 20th century excavations describe hearing rhythmic pounding from beneath the ground like distant drums. Some reported that when they rested their ears against the Sphinx's flanks, they could hear what sounded like flowing water or whispers in a language they could not understand. For skeptics, these are simply the sounds of shifting earth or the imagination of men working under the desert sun. Yet for those who listen with belief, the stone itself is speaking, telling secrets that the conscious mind cannot fully grasp. The symbolism of echoes in Egyptian culture is profound. The Egyptians saw words, chants, and sounds as forces that shaped reality. The act of speaking a name was an act of power, binding the present to the eternal. If the Sphinx carries echoes, then those reverberations could be the remnants of ancient rituals, chants of priests, hymns to the sun god Ra, or invocations of protection meant to endure for eternity. Every vibration trapped in the stone might be a fragment of forgotten prayer, still circling within the limestone like a bird that never found release. More esoteric traditions take the mystery further. Some mystics believe that the echoes in the stone are not merely natural or historical, but interdimensional. They suggest that the Sphinx sits upon a node of planetary energy, a place where the Earth's frequencies interact with cosmic vibrations. According to this view, the echoes are signals, not from humans or gods, but from the planet itself, resonating like a vast instrument. To attune oneself to these sounds, they argue, is to align with the hidden harmonies of the universe. One particularly strange account comes from the 1980s, when a group of researchers conducted sound tests near the Sphinx. They reported capturing audio anomalies on their equipment, faint tones that did not correspond to any known natural frequency in the area. Even more unsettling, some recordings contained patterns resembling human-like whispers, though no one present had spoken. While such findings are often dismissed as interference, they have fueled speculation that the Sphinx carries stored information, that sound itself may be the key to unlocking its secrets. If walls can hold echoes, perhaps they can also hold memory. The echoes also tie back to the idea of sealed chambers and doors beneath the monument. Some theorists propose that the vibrations felt near the paws of the Sphinx are not random but the result of hollow spaces resonating beneath the stone. Seismographic studies have supported this possibility, suggesting cavities that could amplify sound in unusual ways. Could it be that the echoes are the voices of empty chambers, calling attention to their existence? If so, then the stone itself may be guiding us, using sound as a subtle map to hidden spaces. Yet there's another, more unsettling possibility. Echoes can be deceptive. They distort, repeat, and confuse the source of sound. In mythology, echo was a voice without a body, a reminder that not all voices carry truth. The echoes within the Sphinx may not be messages but traps, illusions born of stone and wind that draws into endless speculation. To chase an echo is to pursue a shadow, always hearing but never arriving at the source. Perhaps that is the Sphinx's greatest riddle, to lure us with a promise of answers, only to leave us entangled in reflections of our own desires. Still, the allure of the echoes cannot be denied. Pilgrims, mystics, scientists, and dreamers continue to listen. Some sit in meditation at the base of the monument, believing that the subtle hum can alter consciousness, unlocking visions of the ancient world. Others record and analyze the sounds, searching for patterns that might reveal hidden truths. All are united by the same conviction that the Sphinx is not silent, but speaking, not through words, but through the language of resonance. In the end, the echoes in the stone remind us that monuments are not lifeless. They absorb, remember, and reflect the lives that surround them. The Great Sphinx has witnessed empires rise and fall, has endured storms, wars, and restorations. It has absorbed the chants of priests, the cries of conquerors, the whispers of pilgrims, and even the footsteps of tourists. All of these sounds linger, folded into its body, waiting to be heard. To stand before it is to hear not just a desert, but time itself echoing back through the stone. And so the mystery endures. Whether natural acoustics, remnants of ritual, or messages from forces beyond comprehension, the echoes invite us to listen. They remind us that silence is never empty, that even the most immovable monument carries a voice. The question is not whether the Sphinx speaks, but whether we are prepared to understand what it says. For thousands of years, the Sphinx has stood as more than just stone. It has been a sentinel, a guardian carved with purpose, watching over the shifting sands and the fragile kingdoms that rose and fell before its gaze. But what if this monument is not simply a relic of pride and artistry, but a warning, a silent messenger left by those who came before, cautioning the future about dangers hidden beneath the earth? Legends across centuries whisper that the Sphinx is not only the keeper of mysteries, but also the herald of consequences should those mysteries ever be disturbed. Ancient Egyptians saw guardianship not as a mere symbol, but as a sacred duty. Statues and carvings were often placed at temple entrances to protect sacred knowledge within. The Sphinx, monumental in scale and power, embodies a tradition to its ultimate degree. It faces east, forever watching the rising sun, forever vigilant. Some Egyptologists argue that this positioning was deliberate, meant to align not only with the cycles of nature but also with cycles of human ambition. To gaze upon the Sphinx was to be reminded that sacred knowledge is not free, it comes with a cost. In later centuries, whispers spread of prophecies attached to the Sphinx. Arabic texts from the Middle Ages recount how local mystics believed the Sphinx was enchanted, holding a warning to all who might defile it. These tales spoke of kings who attempted to drill into its body or search beneath it, only to meet ruin. Crops failed, rivers ran dry, and storms swept across the land. To the faithful, these were not coincidences but curses, manifestations of the Sphinx's wrath, or rather, the curse of disturbing what the guardian was sworn to protect. One of the most persistent ideas surrounding the Sphinx's warning connects to the so-called Hall of Records, a legendary chamber said to contain the wisdom of a lost civilization. According to this myth, the Sphinx was constructed to guard this chamber and ensure its secrets would not be revealed until humanity was ready. If true, the Sphinx itself is not the treasure, but the lock. The warning, then, is clear. Tamper with a lock too soon, and the consequences will ripple across the world. The question remains, who decide when humanity is ready? And what if we are not meant to be? Modern encounters add eerie weight to these old stories. Engineers and archaeologists who have investigated around the Sphinx often report strange misfortunes. Equipment fails without explanation, surveys return inexplicable anomalies, and some teams abandon their work after accidents that feel too coincidental to ignore. While skeptics dismiss these events as chance, believers see the pattern of a guardian's warning. To them, the Sphinx speaks not through word but through misfortune, a subtle hand steering intruders away from secrets too dangerous to uncover. What is the nature of such a warning? Some suggest it is not mystical at all, but a practical safeguard. Ancient builders may have engineered the monument and the tunnels beneath it with deliberate traps, unstable passages, collapsible chambers, or sealed flood tunnels designed to destroy intruders and their discoveries. In this sense, the Sphinx's warning is not supernatural, but technological, a carefully constructed defense system. If so, then anyone who dares to open what lies beneath may find themselves crushed by the very genius of those who came before. And yet, the mythic dimension cannot be ignored. Across cultures, guardians of wisdom are never passive. From dragons in European tales to Nagas in Indian legends, knowledge worth having is always shielded by a force that tests human courage and morality. The Sphinx, with its half-human, half-lion form, embodies this duality, wisdom paired with raw power. To approach it recklessly is to face destruction. To approach with humility is to be granted passage. Perhaps this is a true warning, that wisdom itself is dangerous, and those who seek it must prove themselves worthy. Some esoteric schools interpret the warning in a more symbolic way. They claim the Sphinx embodies a prophecy, that when humanity becomes arrogant enough to think it has mastered the earth, the guardian will rise metaphorically to humble us. Climate change, resource wars, and the crumbling of civilizations are, in this view, the unfolding of the Sphinx's warning that no empire, however mighty, can defy time. The monument's silent endurance is not just a reminder of the past, but a prophecy for the future, that we too will one day be ruins in the sand. There are even stories that the Sphinx delivers warnings directly. Mystics and dreamers through the ages claim to have received visions after sleeping near the monument. Some report dreams of fire-consuming cities, of the Nile drying to dust, of vast storms burying the land beneath sand once again. Others speak of voices that urge restraint. Do not open what is closed. Such visions may be dismissed as imagination, yet they mirror the recurring theme. The guardian does not sleep, and it continues to caution those who listen. But perhaps the most chilling idea is this. What if the warning is not against uncovering knowledge, but against ignoring it? The Sphinx may not be protecting a hidden chamber at all. Its true message may be carved in its body, written in the erosion, in the alignment with stars, in the echoes of its stone. Perhaps the warning is not stay away, but pay attention. Humanity's refusal to listen may be the real danger. In that sense, the Sphinx is less a lockbox and more a signpost, one that we have failed to read for centuries. The Guardian's warning lingers like an unanswered riddle. Is it a curse that punishes curiosity? A physical safeguard to protect ancient secrets? A prophecy about the cycles of civilization? Oh, all of these at once. Whatever the truth, the Sphinx does not invite casual trespass. It challenges us, demands reverence, and reminds us that not all knowledge is free for the taking. To misinterpret its silence as passivity may be humanity's gravest mistake. And so the Sphinx waits. With every passing century, it watches new generations approach with questions and ambition. Some listen to the warning, retreating with humility. Others push forward, determined to break the seal of history. The Guardian's gaze remains unblinking, eternal. Its warning is not shouted, but whispered through time. Tread carefully, for what lies below is not just history, it may be destiny. Beneath the golden dunes of Egypt, whispers of forgotten worlds stir like ghosts trapped in the desert wind. For centuries, explorers and mystics have wondered whether the Sphinx is more than a monument to kings and gods. Could it be a beacon pointing towards something older, the remnant of a civilization erased from memory, hidden beneath layers of sand and silence? The idea is seductive, almost heretical, that Egypt, as glorious and ancient as it appears, may itself be the child of an even older parent. Plato's dialogues introduce the Western world to the myth of Atlantis, a great civilization swallowed by the sea after it grew arrogant and defied the gods. For most scholars, Atlantis remains allegory, a moral tale cloaked in myth. Yet the legend's tantalizing hints, coupled with unexplained anomalies in Egypt, have led many to believe that the Sphinx and pyramids might preserve fragments of an Atlantean inheritance. The Hall of Records theory, often tied to the Sphinx, suggests a library buried beneath its paws, a vault holding the wisdom of a lost world meant to be revealed only when humanity is ready to wield it responsibly. Supporters of this theory point to evidence that seems to stretch beyond conventional timelines. The weathering patterns on the Sphinx, for example, have fueled debate for decades. Some geologists argue that the erosion on its body is caused not merely by wind and sand, but by heavy, sustained rainfall. If true, this would place the origins of the Sphinx in a time when the Giza Plateau experienced a wetter climate, thousands of years before the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, to whom the statue is traditionally attributed. This anomaly raises a radical question. Who could have carved such a monument in that prehistoric age? The possibility of an older civilization has ignited speculation among alternative historians. They suggest that before the dynastic Egyptians, before the great unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, there existed a culture advanced enough to quarry and shape stone on a massive scale. This civilization may have vanished due to natural cataclysm, floods, earthquakes, or desertification, leaving behind only whispers. The Sphinx, then, would not be a pharaonic symbol at all, but a relic from forgotten epoch, adopted and reinterpreted by later rulers. Archaeological finds provide fragments of intrigue. Beneath the sands of Egypt, researchers have uncovered artifacts that seem to predate known dynasties, anomalous tools, unfinished works, and layers of occupation that suggest human activity far older than official timelines allow. While mainstream Egyptology attributes these to early pre-dynastic tribes, others argue they may be the faint fingerprints of a civilization erased almost entirely. If so, the Sphinx may be the most visible remnant of their legacy, preserved by scale and by purpose. Beyond the scientific debates, myths abound. Ancient Egyptian texts speak of Zep-Tepi, the first time, an age when God walked among men and established the order of the world. To many, this is metaphor. To others, it is a dimly remembered account of a lost golden age. Could Zep-Tepi refer to a prehistoric civilization whose memory was mythologized as divine? The Sphinx, silent and eternal, may be the monument of that forgotten dawn, a literal face gazing from antiquity into eternity. The idea of lost civilizations beneath Egypt's sands is not confined to Atlantis or Zep-Tepi alone. Some legends suggest entire cities buried beneath dunes, swallowed by shifting landscapes over millennia. Bedouin tales speak of subterranean palaces, rivers of stone, and halls where the dead whisper to the living. In modern times, satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar have revealed anomalies, rectangular patterns, cavities, and geometric shapes beneath the desert surface. While many of these turn out to be natural formations or known ruins, some remain unexplained, fueling speculation that the sands hide far more than we realize. Skeptics counter that these stories are built on exaggeration, misinterpretation, or wishful thinking. They argue that the allure of lost civilization stems from humanity's hunger for mystery, our refusal to accept that the grandeur of Egypt arose solely from the genius of its own people. Yet even the skeptics must admit that much of Egypt remains unexcavated. It is said that more than 70% of the country's archaeological heritage is still buried beneath desert and city alike. With so much left unseen, can we confidently deny the possibility of something extraordinary waiting to be uncovered? Emotional resonance fuels this fascination. The idea of a lost civilization is not just about history, it is about identity. If the Sphinx does indeed guard remnants of an older world, then humanity's story is far deeper, stranger, and more interconnected than we have been taught. It suggests that we are heirs not only to Egypt, Greece, or Mesopotamia, but to something far older, a civilization that lived, thrived, and died, leaving only whispers in stone. Such a realization would shake the foundations of everything we think we know about human progress. And so the sand continue to guard their secrets. Archaeologists dig, mystics dream, and researchers debate. Every stone fragment uncovered in the desert, every anomaly beneath the Sphinx, adds fuel to the fire of possibility. Perhaps the truth is more extraordinary than either side dares to imagine. Not Atlantis alone, no myth alone, but a tapestry of civilizations, some remembered, some erased, woven together in the silent desert. As the Sphinx watches, unblinking, one cannot escape the feeling that it knows the truth, that it has always known. Its warning may not be one of curses or doom, but of remembrance. Do not forget what lies buried. For if we uncover the lost civilizations beneath the sand, we may not only learn about the past, we may also learn about ourselves and the fragile line between greatness and oblivion. In the shadow of the Sphinx, where time itself seems to hesitate, there lingers a question that troubles both archaeologists and dreamers. Who else lies beneath the sands, entombed and unremembered? Egypt is a land of kings, its history carved in stone and sung through hieroglyphs. Yet for every pharaoh whose name we know, there may be others erased from record, rulers, visionaries, or tyrants whose tombs were buried so completely that only silence remains. Some believe the sands conceal not just monuments, but the very graves of forgotten kings. The Valley of the Kings is celebrated as a resting place of pharaohs, yet even there mysteries abound. Archaeologists have uncovered tombs that were started and never finished, chambers sealed without names, and shafts that plunge into darkness before ending abruptly. These anomalies suggest stories untold, kings whose reigns ended before their monuments could be completed, dynasties erased by rivals, or rulers deliberately omitted from history. If the valley itself holds such gaps, how many more secrets lie beneath the untouched deserts around the Sphinx? One of the most haunting possibilities is that entire lines of kings have been erased from memory. Ancient Egyptian rulers often ordered the names of their enemies or predecessors chiseled out, their cartouches hammered smooth, their monuments defaced. To erase a name was to erase a soul, condemning it to eternal oblivion. Yet stone, though scarred, still remembers. Perhaps beneath the sands near the Sphinx are tombs deliberately hidden, the final resting places of those whose names were struck from history, preserved not in record but in silence. Legends from the Middle Ages describe strange burial vaults near the Sphinx, sealed long before the time of Khafre. These were said to belong not to pharaohs of the dynastic age, but to kings of a time when Egypt was still young, rulers who commanded floods, storms, or even knowledge from the stars. Such tales may be myth, but they carry an unsettling consistency, the belief that beneath the sands lie tombs not yet opened, containing rulers whose power was meant to be forgotten. Some researchers have pointed to the unexplored shafts and cavities around the Sphinx as potential tomb sites. Seismic surveys have revealed voids beneath and near the monument, some narrow, some vast. Are these mere geological formations, or carefully crafted burial chambers? Egyptologists caution against wild speculation, but history has already proven that Egypt hides treasures beyond imagination. When Howard Carter stumbled upon the tomb of Tutankhamun, it was a result of stubborn persistence after others had declared the valley empty. If such a discovery was possible in a well-explored region, how much more might await beneath the untouched sands at Giza? The possibility of forgotten tombs extends beyond the pharaohs. Egypt's rulers were not alone in their grandeur. High priests, generals, and foreign kings who once held power in the Nile Valley may also have been granted secret burials. Some inscriptions hint at rulers who came from distant lands, forging alliances or conquest that official history later sought to erase. Their tombs, if they exist, may contain artifacts not of Egypt alone, but of entire cultures mingling in the crucible of the ancient world. But perhaps the most tantalizing idea is that the Sphinx itself marks the threshold of a hidden necropolis, a city of the dead buried deep underground. Ancient texts speak of labyrinths of chambers beneath the sands, some stretching for miles, lined with the tombs of kings and nobles. The most famous of these is a labyrinth of Amenemhat, a vast funerary complex described by Herodotus and Strabo. Though its remains have been found at Hawara, some theorists suggest that the description was inspired by an even older labyrinth hidden near Giza, where forgotten kings were entombed in silence. What might such tombs reveal if uncovered? Beyond gold and treasures, they would hold the unspoken history of Egypt, stories that contradict the official record, accounts of rulers whose existence was erased for political or spiritual reasons. The very act of uncovering them would rewrite what we know of power, succession, and memory in the ancient world. But such discoveries would not come without danger. The ancients were masters of secrecy, and tombs were often protected with both physical traps and spiritual curses. To break such seals would be to risk not only the collapse of stone, but perhaps the collapse of order itself. And yet, the idea of forgotten kings lying in eternal silence stays something profound in us. These rulers, once clothed in gold and power, now sleep beneath unmarked sands, their names unspoken, their glories unseen. To imagine them waiting there, untouched for millennia, is to feel the weight of time pressing down. It forces us to confront the fragility of legacy, how easily even the mightiest can be erased, how thin the line is between memory and oblivion. The Sphinx, timeless and unblinking, seems to watch over these secrets knowingly. Perhaps it guards not only the mysteries of lost civilizations, but also the graves of those who once ruled them. If the tombs of forgotten kings are ever unearthed, they may bring with them more than relics. They may bring questions that shake the very foundations of history. Who were these kings? Why were they erased? And what truths did they take with them into the silence of the earth? For now, the sands remain unbroken, the tombs undisturbed. But beneath the desert, the forgotten kings wait. Whether they lie as cautionary shadows or as beacons of lost wisdom, their presence haunts the imagination. The Sphinx watches still, and the question lingers like a whisper in the wind. Will we one day find them, or will they remain, forever, the rulers of silence? Beneath the burning sands of Egypt, there lingers a legend so vast, so unbelievable, that even today it divides scholars, mystics, and explorers. It is a legend of the labyrinth, a sprawling maze of passageways, chambers, and hidden holes said to extend beneath the Giza plateau, perhaps even beneath the Sphinx itself. Ancient sources describe it as one of the greatest wonders of the ancient world, a place where kings and priests stored not only treasures but also the deepest secrets of their civilization. If such a labyrinth exists, it would transform everything we know about Egypt's past. Herodotus, the father of history, was one of the first to write of this labyrinth. He claimed to have seen it with his own eyes, describing it as a structure so immense and complex that it rivaled the pyramids themselves. Within its walls, he wrote, were 12 great courts and thousands of rooms, some above ground, others below, decorated with carvings and filled with the relics of countless kings. Later, the Greek geographer Strabo echoed these accounts, speaking of a labyrinth that could overwhelm even the most seasoned traveler. Both men agreed it was not just a building, but a world within a world. Historians have long debated whether Herodotus and Strabo were exaggerating, misled, or reporting truth now lost to time. Some point to the remains of a massive structure at Hawara, known as the Labyrinth of Amenemhat III, which could be the source of these tales. But others argue that the true labyrinth described by the ancients was far greater, and that what we see at Hawara is only a shadow of the original. Could the real labyrinth still lie hidden, buried beneath Giza sands? Seismic studies around the Sphinx in the late 20th century revealed tantalizing anomalies. Researchers found evidence of cavities, chambers, and unusual hollows beneath the paws and body of the Sphinx, leading some to speculate that these may be entrances to a hidden network below. While mainstream Egyptology urges caution, insisting the anomalies may be natural fissures, alternative historians see in them the first hints of something extraordinary, the legendary labyrinth. But what would such a labyrinth be for? Theories abound. Some believe it served as a necropolis, housing the tombs of forgotten kings in a vast underground city of the dead. Others suggest it was a library, a hall of records where knowledge from a lost civilization was preserved against the ravages of time. Mystics take it further still, describing the labyrinth as a spiritual initiation ground, where priests guided initiates through chambers designed to test courage, wisdom, and purity of heart. In this view, the labyrinth was not merely physical but metaphysical, a journey into the soul as much as into stone. Legend from the Arab world enriched the mystery. Medieval texts speak of tunnels stretching beneath the Giza plateau, guarded by mechanical traps and magical inscriptions. Some stories claim serpents of bronze or fire once protected the passages, striking down those who entered unprepared. Others describe inscriptions warning trespassers that the path beyond the guardian was to face the wrath of the gods. Whether allegory or truth, these tales reinforce the sense that if a labyrinth exists, it was never meant to be entered lightly. Modern accounts add further intrigue. Local villagers near Giza have long spoken of hidden passages uncovered accidentally during building or excavation, quickly resealed by authorities. Rumors circulate of expeditions in the 20th century that discovered underground holes only to have them sealed off, the findings kept secret. Some claim the Egyptian government, perhaps in cooperation with foreign powers, knows more than it admits. For believers, the secrecy is itself proof that the labyrinth is real, and too powerful a discovery to reveal openly. To imagine walking through such a place is to step into a dream. Picture corridors stretching into darkness, their walls etched with hieroglyphs untouched for millennia. Imagine vast halls supported by pillars of stone, where echoes linger like the voices of the dead. Within alcoves could lie relics of unimaginable value, not gold or jewels alone, but records of lost dynasties, maps of forgotten lands, knowledge that could rewrite history. Each turn of the labyrinth would hold both wonder and terror, for to lose one's way in its depths would mean never returning to the surface. The symbolism of the labyrinth is powerful in itself. Across cultures, the labyrinth represents a journey of transformation. To enter it is to confront uncertainty, to be tested by confusion and fear. The path is not straight but winding, forcing humility and perseverance. Emerging from it is not just escape but rebirth. If such a labyrinth lies beneath the Sphinx, it may be more than a tomb or archive. It may be a message that wisdom is not granted freely, but earned through struggle, patience, and courage. Yet there is a darker side to this vision. A labyrinth conceals as much as it reveals. Its very design is meant to trap, to mislead, to confuse. Those who wander without guidance may vanish into its depths, swallowed by the earth. If such a labyrinth truly exists beneath Giza, perhaps that is why it has remained hidden, not out of oversight, but by design. Its builders may have intended it to remain sealed forever, protecting knowledge or power too dangerous for the unworthy. The desert is patient. For thousands of years, the sands have buried secrets deeper than memory, and the labyrinth may be one of them. Whether myth or reality, the idea of vast underground passages beneath the Sphinx resonates because it feels right. The monument above ground is too enigmatic, too purposeful, to stand alone. Like an iceberg, the visible may be only a fraction of its true mass, its heart lying hidden below. And so we return to the question, is a labyrinth real? Archaeologists remain divided, evidence remains fragmentary, and yet the allure endures. The Sphinx, silent and inscrutable, gives no answer. It watches, as it always has, as we puzzle over its secrets. Perhaps the labyrinth is not meant to be found until we are ready. Or perhaps it has already been found, its truth too dangerous to share. What lies beneath the Sphinx, tomb, library, or maze, remains hidden. But in the silence of the desert night, as the stars blaze overhead and the wind whispers across ancient stone, one cannot shake the sense that the labyrinth below is more than legend. It is possibility, waiting, breathing beneath the sand. If the labyrinth beneath the sands of Egypt truly exists, then the question that haunts every seeker is not only what lies within, but what protects it. Ancient cultures rarely left their most sacred places undefended, and in Egypt, where the balance between life and death was guarded with almost supernatural intensity, it is only natural to assume that any hidden chambers would have been secured by guardians both human and divine. These guardians, whether made of stone, spirit, or script, represent the threshold between ordinary existence and the forbidden realm of eternal knowledge. The ancient Egyptians did not view their tombs and temples merely as monuments of stone. They saw them as living sanctuaries inhabited by protective forces. Statues of gods and sacred animals were not decorative but imbued with spiritual power, believed to ward off intruders. If the labyrinth is indeed real, the guardians of its chambers might not simply be symbolic. They may have been deliberately placed constructs, statues, traps, and enchantments designed to strike terror into anyone daring to trespass. One of the oldest beliefs tied to Egyptian architecture is the concept of the sole guardian. Priests were said to invoke spells that allowed carved figures to come alive in spirit, attacking intruders in dreams, visions, or even in waking life. Imagine walking through a hidden passage and coming across a row of jackal-headed statues, each representing Anubis, the god of death. To the untrained eye, they would appear as stone, but to the ancient initiate, each one was a sentinel, a warning that the chambers beyond were not meant for the profane. Legends recorded by Arab chroniclers in the Middle Ages describe precisely such guardians. According to these accounts, the hidden vaults beneath Giza were protected by statues of bronze serpents that would strike down intruders with fire, and by lifelike figures of animals that moved as if alive. Some stories go further, claiming that inscriptions engraved on the walls contained spells capable of unleashing plagues or summoning storms against the unworthy. Whether these tales were symbolic warnings or literal accounts, they speak to the enduring belief that Egypt's hidden treasures were watched over by forces beyond human control. The concept of mechanical guardians also cannot be dismissed. The ingenuity of the ancient Egyptians extended far beyond stonework. Archaeological discoveries show they were masters of hidden doors, counterweight systems, and clever devices meant to protect tombs from grave robbers. Could the labyrinth contain advanced traps, falling stone blocks, shifting floors, or even water-filled chambers that drowned trespassers? Herodotus himself noted that Egyptian builders were capable of such feats. In this view, the labyrinth was not only a test of spiritual work, but a gauntlet of physical challenges designed to weed out all but the most determined. But the guardians may not have been merely mechanical or symbolic. Some believe the labyrinth was infused with what modern mystics call energy fields, spiritual or electromagnetic forces created by the alignment of the chambers with celestial bodies. According to this theory, certain rooms may have been designed to resonate with sound, producing vibrations capable of disorienting or overwhelming intruders. To those who enter without understanding, the labyrinth itself could become a guardian, its very walls singing with the power of the stars. Stories of curses also play into this idea. The curse of the pharaohs, made famous by the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, was not unique. Inscriptions warning of divine retribution were carved into many burial sites, promising death, madness, or misfortune to those who disturbed the resting places of the dead. If the labyrinth was the ultimate repository of Egypt's hidden knowledge, one can only imagine the scale of the curses placed upon it. Such inscriptions may not have been mere superstition but psychological weapons, instilling such fear that trespassers falter before even attempting to proceed. The guardians of the hidden chambers may also take the form of myth itself. Egyptian texts often describe fierce beings known as protectors of the Duat, the underworld. These entities, serpent dragons, scorpion-headed warriors, and lion-faced spirits, guarded the gates through which souls had to pass on their journey after death. If the labyrinth were designed as a symbolic underworld on oath, its guardians could have been carved depictions of these very beings, transforming the passage into a ritual of spiritual trial. To face such guardians was to confront not only fear of death but fear of judgment. Some esoteric traditions go even further, claiming that the guardians of the labyrinth may still be active today, not as statues or traps, but as energies tied to place itself. Theosophists and mystics speak of watchers, invisible presences that protect sacred sites from desecration. To them, the labyrinth is not abandoned but alive, its guardians as vigilant as they were thousands of years ago. Explorers who come too close may experience sudden illness, disorientation, or visions, not by chance but as a warning to turn back. And what of human guardians? If whispers of modern discoveries are to be believed, then perhaps the greatest protectors of the labyrinth are not statues or curses but governments and institutions determined to control access to its secrets. Rumors abound of sealed entrances, hidden excavations, and findings that were swiftly suppressed. In this view, secrecy itself is a guardian, ensuring that the labyrinth's contents remain untouched, not by ancient design but by modern will. Ultimately, the guardians of the hidden chambers embody the timeless truth that sacred knowledge is never given freely. Whether in the form of statues that watch with unblinking eyes, traps set to punish greed, curses etched into stone, or the invisible gaze of spiritual sentinels, the labyrinth's protectors serve one purpose: to remind us that power and wisdom demand respect. Those who approach without reverence, humility, or readiness will find themselves lost, destroyed, or turned away. Yet for the true initiate, the guardians are not enemies but teachers. To face them is to confront fear, temptation, and the limits of one's courage. Passing through their trials is not simply about gaining access to hidden chambers, but about proving oneself worthy of the knowledge within. The labyrinth, then, becomes a mirror of the soul, its guardians the obstacles we must overcome within ourselves. The desert holds its silence, and the Sphinx watches still. If beneath it lies a labyrinth, then somewhere within its depths wait the guardians, carved in stone, hidden in shadow, or etched into the very air. Their presence ensures that when the secret is finally revealed, it will not be by accident, but by destiny. Beneath the golden sands of Egypt, where the desert swallows memory and time itself feels suspended, whispers speak of a burial place unlike any other, not for the celebrated pharaohs whose names echo through history, but for kings erased, dethroned, or deliberately forgotten. Some believe that hidden deep within the labyrinth beneath the Sphinx lies a crypt reserved not for the honored but for the condemned, a secret necropolis where the shadows of Egypt's rulers were consigned to silence. If true, this would mean the labyrinth was more than a library or a temple. It was also a tomb, a place of eternal concealment. Egyptian history is littered with figures who were erased from the official record. Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh, attempted to overthrow the entire pantheon of gods in favor of the Aten, the sun disk. His reign ended in disgrace, his monuments defaced, his memory branded as dangerous. Hatshepsut, one of the most successful female rulers, was nearly wiped from inscriptions after her death by successors who feared her legacy. Smenkhkare, and other mysterious short-lived kings flicker in records like ghosts, present in fragments but absent in clarity. Could the labyrinth have served as their resting place, hidden away from the eyes of posterity? The Egyptians believed in the concept of damnatio memoriae, the deliberate erasure of names and images, which denied a person immortality in the afterlife. Yet the bodies of such rulers still required burial. Where, then, did they go? To bury them in the Valley of the Kings would have risked recognition. To leave them unburied would have risked divine punishment. The answer, some suggest, was to inter them secretly in chambers so well hidden that no tomb robber, no priest, and no historian could ever find them. The labyrinth beneath the Sphinx, if it exists, may have been the perfect solution. Imagine a corridor winding deep beneath the sands, leading to a hole where sarcophagi of black granite or red quartzite stand in silence, each unmarked, each stripped of royal titles. The air is thick with the weight of secrecy. These were rulers denied eternity through inscription, but perhaps preserved in another way. Buried in anonymity, their resting place a riddle within a riddle. To stumble upon such a chamber would be to confront not just the dead, but the censored pages of history itself. The possibility of such a necropolis beneath the Giza plateau is not mere fantasy. Ancient texts provide tantalizing clues. Strabo, the Greek geographer, wrote of hidden tombs near the pyramids. Herodotus mentioned underground passages connecting temples and burial sites. Later Arab chroniclers described sealed doors beneath the sands, leading to rooms filled with the dead. Though often dismissed as exaggerations, these accounts consistently return to the idea of subterranean holes where kings were laid to rest. Were these kings the honored rulers we know, or the forgotten ones deliberately erased? The emotional weight of this possibility is profound. History is not only about what is remembered, but also about what is deliberately hidden. Every erased name represents a human life once filled with ambition, struggle, triumph, and failure. To walk among their tombs would be to encounter Egypt's rejected children, kings who once held the world's greatest throne only to be cast into silence. The labyrinth, then, becomes not only a place of mystery but of mourning, a graveyard for memories a world was not meant to keep. Adding to this enigma is the question of ritual. If the labyrinth was indeed used for such burials, what ceremonies accompanied them? Were priests sworn to secrecy, conducting rites at night under torchlight, far from the public gaze? Were the names of these rulers spoken one last time before being struck from all records? Did the labyrinth serve as a purgatory of sorts, where their bodies were interred but their souls left in limbo? Modern archaeology hints at possibilities but provides no answers. The discovery of unfinished shafts, anomalous chambers, and unexplained voids beneath the Sphinx suggests a complex subterranean world waiting to be understood. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have shown rectangular hollows where none should exist. Could these be burial vaults? The official line often dismisses such findings as natural fissures, but the regularity of the shape suggests otherwise. If these voids are man-made, then the question becomes, what or who rests inside them? The implications of such a find would be staggering. Imagine uncovering the tomb of Akhenaten, whose radical beliefs may have inspired later monotheistic traditions, or discovering the final resting place of Hatshepsut, her body preserved despite her erasure from stone. Even the tomb of a minor king, lost to history, would rewrite chapters of Egyptian chronology. Each sarcophagus would not just hold bones but stories that challenge the official version of history handed down through millennia. And yet, there's another, darker possibility. What if the labyrinth was not a tomb of forgotten kings by accident, but by design? What if it was intended as a prison for those considered dangerous even in death? To the ancient Egyptians, the dead were not powerless. Their spirits, if improperly appeased, could wreak havoc upon the living. To bury such rulers in secret chambers far beneath the earth may have been a way to contain them, a spiritual quarantine. The labyrinth, then, becomes not merely a necropolis but a cage for restless souls. As the winds sweep across the Giza plateau and the Sphinx gazes endlessly into the horizon, one cannot help but wonder, are there kings below its paws, their sarcophagi sealed in eternal darkness? Are there names we were never meant to know, whose stories were carved out of history but preserved in stone below the desert? The tomb of forgotten kings, if real, is not just a burial place but a message, that even the mightiest can be silenced, their legacy buried as deeply as their bones. But history has a strange way of rebelling against silence. Secrets eventually rise, as sands shift and as the curiosity of humankind digs deeper. Perhaps one day the tomb of forgotten kings will be revealed, and when it is, it will not only change our understanding of Egypt but remind us of a timeless truth, that memory, however deeply buried, always finds its way back to the surface. Long before telescopes charted the heavens or satellites mapped the cosmos, the ancient Egyptians looked up at the night sky and saw not just stars, but gods, destinies, and a cosmic order reflected on earth. To them, the sky was a mirror of divine will, and every temple, pyramid, and statue was aligned with purpose. The Great Sphinx, with its massive, unblinking gaze fixed eternally toward the east, is no exception. Some believe that its true meaning can only be understood when read alongside the stars, for in Egypt, stone and sky were inseparable. The alignment of the Sphinx with the rising sun on the spring and autumn equinox is one of the most striking pieces of evidence for its celestial significance. Twice a year, As the day and night balance in perfect harmony, the first rays of dawn fall directly upon the Sphinx's face. This is no coincidence. To the Egyptians, the equinox symbolized balance and renewal, the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. The Sphinx, therefore, may not only be a guardian of the plateau, but also a cosmic sentinel, watching over the turning of the heavens themselves. Beyond the sun, the stars themselves carry deeper secrets. Scholars of archaeoastronomy argue that the Sphinx's leonine body is no accident. In the skies above, the constellation Leo reigns as a lion of the heavens, a celestial beast that emerges on the horizon just as the Sphinx seems to rise from the sands. In the epoch when the Sphinx is thought to have been built, Leo would have aligned almost perfectly with the eastward gaze of the statue at dawn. Was the Sphinx, then, a stone reflection of the lion in the sky, a cosmic doubling, anchoring heaven to earth? The connection does not stop there. Directly to the west of the Sphinx rise the pyramids of Giza, monuments that many believe mirror the 3 stars of Orion's belt. To the Egyptians, Orion was Osiris, lord of the afterlife, judge of souls, and eternal king of the dead. When viewed as a whole, the Giza plateau may have been a giant star map, the pyramids echoing Orion, the Sphinx embodying Leo, and the Nile reflecting the Milky Way. If this is true, then standing before the Sphinx is not just standing before a statue, but standing at the intersection of earth and sky, of human labor and divine order. This celestial symbolism may hold the key to the labyrinth beneath. Ancient myths often describe hidden knowledge as being under the line or beneath the horizon. If the Sphinx represents Leo, the guardian of the eastern sky, then perhaps the tunnels below were seen as gateways into the underworld, the duat, the spiritual mirror of the heavens. The labyrinth may not have been a library in the earthly sense, but a cosmic one, a place where wisdom from the stars were preserved in rituals, inscriptions, and sacred objects. Consider the story of the Zep Tepi, the Egyptian myth of the first time, when gods walked the earth and brought with them the knowledge of civilization. Some traditions claim that records of this age were hidden away to await humanity's rediscovery. Where better to place such a library than beneath the guardian who embodies the union of heaven and earth? The Sphinx, with its leonine body and human face, symbolizes both animal strength and divine intelligence, the perfect sentinel for secrets too great to be left in plain sight. The relationship between the Sphinx and the stars also extends to cycles of time far larger than a human lifespan. The precession of the equinoxes, a slow, 26,000-year wobble of the Earth's axis, changes the position of the stars over millennia. Some researchers argue that the Sphinx was designed not for the time of Khafre, but for an earlier epoch, when Leo rose at dawn during the spring equinox, around 10,500 BCE. If so, then the Sphinx may be far older than mainstream archaeology suggests, a relic of a forgotten civilization that marked the heavens long before pharaonic Egypt rose. This theory, though controversial, carries profound implications. If the Sphinx was built to mirror the stars of 10,500 BCE, then the labyrinth beneath may not be Egyptian in origin at all, but a legacy of an earlier, lost age. Could this be the reason myths across cultures speak of a flood, a golden age destroyed, and survivors who carry their wisdom into new lands? Perhaps the Sphinx was their monument, and the tunnels beneath are their final gift to posterity, a message carved in stone and hidden in earth, waiting for the right time to resurface. Emotionally, this idea grips us because it ties our small lives to the vastness of the cosmos. To stand before the Sphinx is to stand before something that may not only embody Egypt but the universe itself. Its silence is not just a silence of stone, but the silence of stars, distant, eternal, watching us across eons. The labyrinth below, if real, may contain not only scrolls and artifacts, but a reminder that humanity's story is written in the heavens as much as in the sands. And yet, the Sphinx's celestial gaze also confronts us with humility. For all our technology and knowledge, we still struggle to understand what the ancients seemed to know instinctively, that life on earth is bound to the rhythms of the sky, and that monuments of stone are meaningless unless they resonate with the eternal dance above. The Sphinx and the stars are inseparable. To unlock the tunnels beneath may require more than digging through rock. It may require us to see as the ancients saw, to read the cosmos as a living scripture. As the desert night deepens and the stars blaze overhead, the Sphinx remains fixed, unyielding, forever gazing eastward. It has watched the constellations shift, the rise and fall of civilizations, and the endless passage of time. And perhaps, in its stillness, it continues to whisper its secret. that the answers we seek below its paws are written not only in stone, but also in the heavens above? What if, one day, the labyrinth beneath the Sphinx were opened? What if explorers, whether archaeologists, governments, or secret groups, breached the sealed doors and lit their torches against the darkness of forgotten time? The very thought ignites both wonder and dread, for such a discovery would not simply be archaeological, it would be civilizational. Within those tunnels, if they exist, could lie knowledge that has been deliberately hidden for thousands of years, knowledge so transformative it was considered too dangerous for ordinary humanity. Throughout history, the Egyptians treated knowledge with reverence and caution. Writing itself was called Medu Netja, the words of the gods. To inscribe was to summon divine power. Certain texts, like the Book of Thoth or the Book of the Dead, were said to grant mastery over life and death, the ability to command spirits, or even to speak with the gods themselves. But if such powerful writings existed, where would they be kept? Surely not in temples open to all. They would be hidden in vaults beneath the earth, guarded by curses and shadows, awaiting only those deemed worthy. Legends of the Hall of Records echo across time. Some say it contains scrolls that reveal the true origins of mankind, a pre-dynastic civilization wiped away in a great cataclysm. Others whisper of advanced sciences, maps of the stars drawn with precision that modern astronomers only recently matched, and accounts of technologies capable of moving stone with sound or light. There are even tales of prophesies, foretelling not just Egypt's fate but the rise and fall of civilizations yet unborn. To stumble upon such a whole would not merely illuminate history, it would rewrite it. But herein lies the danger. Knowledge is never neutral. In the wrong hands, sacred wisdom becomes a weapon. Imagine texts describing forgotten energy sources, weapons of sound or light, or the power to influence human consciousness itself. Imagine rituals recorded in stone that promise communion with gods or control over unseen forces. Would modern humanity, fractured and hungry for power, wield such knowledge wisely? Or would it unleash chaos, just as the ancients may have feared? Perhaps this is why the labyrinth has remained sealed, not to hide treasures of gold, but to protect humanity from itself. There are tantalizing hints that fragments of this forbidden knowledge may already have surfaced. Ancient Greek philosophers such as Pythagoras and Plato claimed to have studied in Egypt, returning with mathematical and mystical insights that shaped Western thought. Medieval alchemists spoke of the Emerald Tablets of Hermes, a mysterious text said to originate from Egyptian priests, containing the secret of transmutation. Could these be made echoes of a deeper, hidden library? If so, there may be fragments that slip through the cracks of secrecy, whispers of a far greater archive entombed beneath the desert. Modern accounts add to the mystery. Whispers persist that excavations near the Sphinx in the 20th century uncovered sealed chambers, only for the findings to vanish behind closed doors. Photographs, rumors of documents, and testimonies from insiders suggest that discoveries may have been made but kept hidden. If true, the labyrinth may not be a legend at all, but a secret already known to a select few, jealously guarded, parceled out only in fragments to those deemed trustworthy. In this sense, the guardians of forbidden knowledge may not be ancient curses but modern institutions. Emotionally, the idea grips us because it touches our deepest desires and fears. Humanity has always hungered for ultimate truth, the answer to who we are, where we came from, and what lies beyond death. But we have also always feared what happens when too much knowledge arrives too quickly. The myth of Prometheus, punished for giving fire to man. The tale of Pandora's box, unleashing suffering into the world. The warnings of ancient texts about forbidden wisdom. All remind us that truth can liberate or destroy. The labyrinth beneath the Sphinx, if real, represents the ultimate Pandora's box. The question is not simply whether we can open it, but whether we should. Imagine the first explorer stepping into the chamber, the air heavy with the weight of centuries, their torch illuminating rows of sealed sarcophagi or shelves of crumbling scrolls. Imagine reading words last seen by priests thousands of years ago, words never meant to be read by modern eyes. In that moment, history would bend. Religion, science, politics, all would tremble under the weight of new truths. The world we know might not survive the revelation. And yet, how can we not look? The Sphinx itself seems to demand it, silently daring us to uncover what lies beneath. The human spirit is restless, insatiable, forever reaching beyond the horizon. Perhaps the labyrinth is the ultimate test, not of knowledge, but of wisdom. To find it is to be given a choice: use the knowledge to elevate humanity, or exploit it for power and destruction. That is a true riddle the Sphinx may pose, not a question of words, but of destiny. As the sands shift and technology advances, the possibility grows that one day the forbidden chambers will be opened. Whether by accident, persistence, or design, the silence beneath the paws of Egypt's oldest guardian will not last forever. And when that silence breaks, humanity may find itself standing at a crossroads unlike any before. The knowledge unearthed could be our greatest triumph, or our final undoing. Every civilization has lived with the tension between what is revealed and what is illusion. When it comes to the labyrinth beneath the Sphinx, that tension intensifies to an almost unbearable level. Are we standing on the edge of a revelation that will shatter the boundaries of human understanding, or are we chasing a mirage woven by myth, hope, and human imagination? The line between truth and illusion has always been thin, and nowhere does it blur more dramatically than beneath the desert sands of Giza. For centuries, seekers of knowledge have claimed glimpses of hidden truths, some through archaeology, others through mysticism, and still others through visions or dreams. The whole of record is spoken of in mystical traditions not as a physical chamber, but as an etheric archive, accessible only through altered states of consciousness. Edgar Cayce, the famed sleeping prophet of the 20th century, described the whole not merely as a library beneath the Sphinx, but as part of a global network of wisdom centers left by a lost civilization. His readings predicted that it would be discovered in the late 20th century, though skeptics dismiss these claims as nothing more than wishful prophecies. Yet the idea persists, an enduring flame that refuses to be extinguished. But what if all of this is illusion? Human beings are meaning-making creatures. We crave stories, and we fill the silence of the unknown with myths that soothe our hunger for answers. The labyrinth could be nothing more than a metaphor, the subconscious mind projected onto the landscape, the Sphinx itself a mirror reflecting our need for guardians of wisdom. Perhaps the records exist not in stone halls, but within us, encoded in memory, DNA, or the collective unconscious. If so, then the search beneath the Sphinx is less about digging through sand and more about excavating the human spirit. Still, archaeology provides tantalizing puzzles. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have shown anomalies beneath the Sphinx, suggesting cavities or chambers. Are these made natural fissures in the limestone, or something artificial? Some researchers insist the patterns are too regular to be natural, hinting at deliberate construction. Yet official narratives often downplay such claims, branding them as misinterpretations or pseudoscience. This tension between revelation and illusion becomes a war of interpretation, with evidence sitting at the crossroads of belief. To the believer, every anomaly is a clue. To the skeptic, it is noise. The danger lies in certainty, both of belief and disbelief. Too often, seekers fall prey to illusions that confirm their hopes. An unusual photograph, a mistranslated hieroglyph, or a rumor of a sealed chamber becomes proof. In such cases, the labyrinth risks becoming not a site of truth but projection of human longing. Conversely, rigid skepticism blinds us to genuine discoveries. History is full of truths once dismissed as fantasies, from Troy, once thought mythical, to the Dead Sea Scrolls, doubted until they were unearthed. What seems like illusion in one era can become revelation in another. The emotional weight of this tension is profound. Imagine believing all your life that hidden wisdom lies beneath the sands, only to be confronted with a barren cavern or collapsed tunnel. The disappointment would be crushing. Yet imagine the opposite, opening a chamber and discovering inscriptions, artifacts, or maps that confirm legends once thought impossible. The exhilaration would be overwhelming. Both outcomes, emptiness and wonder, define the razor's edge upon which seekers walk. Philosophically, this raises a deeper question. Does the truth matter as much as the quest itself? Even if the labyrinth proved to be illusion, the search has driven generations to look deeper, to question history, to challenge official narratives. In that sense, the labyrinth, whether real or imagined, has already transformed humanity. It forces us to confront our hunger for meaning, our willingness to risk ridicule in pursuit of mystery, and our capacity to hold both faith and doubt in our hearts simultaneously. And yet, illusions can be dangerous. They can be weaponized. Entire movements can form around myths, shaping belief systems, politics, and even wars. If the labyrinth is nothing but a mirage, then those who exploit it can still wield immense influence, guiding humanity with promises of hidden truths. Revelation, even if illusory, carries power. Those who control the story control the seekers. Thus, the labyrinth may be less about stone and more about narrative, the eternal struggle between those who reveal and those who obscure. So where does that leave us? Perhaps the truth lies in paradox. The labyrinth may be both revelation and illusion. Physically, it might be a modest network of chambers, ancient storehouses, burial vaults, or unfinished passages. But symbolically, it is far larger, a mirror in which humanity projects its deepest questions. In this sense, the labyrinth is real not just because it may exist in stone, but because it already exists in the minds of millions. And sometimes, illusions that endure for thousands of years have their own kind of truth. The Sphinx itself embodies this paradox. Half beast, half human. It is a creature of duality, physical and spiritual, earthly and divine, seen and unseen. Its riddle has always been about identity, who we are, what we become, and how we navigate the mysteries of time. In the same way, the labyrinth beneath it may be both a real chamber and a symbolic construct, a space where the lines blur between revelation and illusion. To step into it is to step into that duality, uncertain whether what we see is ultimate truth or the reflection of our own yearning. In the end, whether the labyrinth reveals forgotten wisdom or nothing more than shadows, it changes us. The quest forces us to look inward as much as outward, to question not just history but ourselves. Perhaps that is the ultimate revelation, that the illusion itself has power, and that in chasing it, we uncover truths not about ancient Egypt, but about the human soul.